Conversation.
I think I remember. I'm the reincarnation of a zoological predator who's tried to find the location of the cult leader Anonymous, who's brainwashed my biological father to take the same road to ruin my past life was traveling. Yeah, that sounds about right. Wait, no, that's all nonsense.
Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I am Dustin Jackson.
And I know, we've done quite a lot of Donkey Kong Country themed episodes. Not just in the month of November, but this entire season of the Kongversation. We've devoted a lot of airtime to the original DKC, but it is, of course...
To be fair...
Yes.
To be fair, Hyle, you've talked a lot about DKC for this entire run of the podcast. Once or twice you've brought it up before.
Once or twice I brought up Donkey Kong Country. Yeah, it's kind of hard to avoid it on the Kongversation, but...
Yeah.
No, generally, though, we mix it up, and we have been focusing a lot on that first game this year, given that it is the 30th anniversary, and we just passed it last week. But there is one more episode I did want to get to before Season 12 wraps up at the end of the year. And we're, of course, going to shift focus, because we still have several more episodes this season to get to. We're going to shift focus to other games in the remaining time we have. But this episode will also launch a new episode format type, because we've obviously discussed game manuals on, say, various spotlight episodes, or anytime it's relevant information. We might dredge up the game's manual and say, well, this is what the instruction booklet has to say about Vine Valley. We just did that a couple of weeks ago, Dustin.
Memories. It feels so in the rear view mirror at this point.
Because we move at a go-go speed here at DK Vine.
We're on top of things.
We're never nostalgic here at DK Vine. We're always moving one step at a time into the future. I can't wait for the Switch 2.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? The Switch 1 is similar to the Flintstones, and the Switch 2 is similar to the Jetsons.
That's right.
I'm so over caveman times.
In that the air is going to be toxic, so we're going to have to live in the clouds.
Exactly.
No, I am actually still very content with my Nintendo Switch, because they put Donkey Kong Land on it last week.
Yeah, it's finally a system worth owning.
Well, I was just thinking, and maybe this is a topic for another day, but I was just thinking about how, is the Switch the ultimate DKU system now?
It's hard to say ultimate since not everything is there, but it still has a very good amount. We're getting there, I think.
Considering so much of it is there, and we also have like N64 versions of Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, with presumably more rare N64 games to come. And yeah, I was just trying to think what would be the ultimate DKU system, because for a while there, you could make a good argument for the Xbox, like the Xbox Series X or S, or even
with Rare Replay and stuff.
Yeah, with Rare Replay, and you could still play like the Playtonic games on there and Sea of Thieves. And so I was like, that could be up there. That could be like, you don't have the Donkey Kong though, and that really holds back making that proclamation. But I think the Switch is a contender now, so we'll save that debate for another time. But yeah, it's been a very busy month for Donkey Kong Country nostalgia, and I was thinking about how much of my affinity, my affection for Donkey Kong Country has to do with the instruction manual. And I know how many people miss game manuals, and even though it has always been incorporated as part of the Kongversation's episode formats. Like, okay, let's see what the manual has to say about this game or this character or this place. I thought it would be fun to have episodes dedicated to nothing but the game manuals, because I feel like they are worthy of that sort of dedicated, I don't want to say spotlight, because that's a different type of episode format, but that like dedicated platform to say, yeah, this in and of itself is worthy of lauding, because so much of my conceptions and adoration of the games of my childhood stemmed from the manual. I remember when, even before I could read, I would have my parents read me the Super Mario Brothers manual, just because I wanted to know what it said next to the pictures. I wanted that context for the world. And then, like, after I learned how to read, video game manuals were one of the first things I would do to reinforce that at home, outside of, homework and, the books you're assigned, or the books your parents have you read. Like, that
reading signs around town.
Yeah, my first leisure reading were video game manuals. And, I mean, that sounds kind of pathetic, I guess, if you're a more scholarly person. If you're more literary minded, you're like, wow, that just goes to show the degradation of intelligence, doesn't it? But no, I mean, I think just reinforcing reading, no matter where you get it, is valuable. And if it encourages kids to read, so long as it isn't hate speech, I think it's fine. So
yeah, if it makes you want to read and it's something you enjoy, no harm in it.
Absolutely. So I was thinking I want to do an episode format just on the manuals, but we've got to figure out a way to do it where it's not just us reading it front and back. Like, because that's pretty,
we don't want it to be an audiobook.
Yeah, now we will be reading some things verbatim because you just can't get around it. But, we'll summarize other bits and we'll just add our own commentary throughout. So I think Donkey Kong Country's instruction booklet is actually something of a work of art, if you can define a work of art in these terms. It's mid-1990s kid art, but art nonetheless.
Yeah. It's something someone made to be enjoyed.
Yeah, I don't think I would.
They put the work and effort into it.
Exactly. They put blood, sweat, and tears into I don't think they literally put blood, like it wasn't like mixed in with the ink like that.
Well, we don't know that.
That Kiss comic book from, I think, the 1970s that had their blood mixed into the ink. I heard
about that.
Yeah, I don't think Dan Owsen, I don't think they made him have an Owsen by pricking his veins and drawing blood from them, but
he said Owsen.
He was an Alson that day, but I don't think I would be as big of a Donkey Kong Country fan as I am had it not been for Blockbuster Video packaging the manuals in their game cases, which they did. That was something they did, at least, at some point into the early aughts. And I thumbed through the instruction manual to Donkey Kong Country in the 10 to 15 minute car drive back to my house. And then after I got the game for Christmas that year, the manual probably went with me everywhere for a bit of time. Like, it was in the car on any car trip. That and the player's guide to the game, once I got that, like later in the spring, and the Donkey Kong Land manual when it came out that summer, or the Donkey Kong Land issue of Nintendo Power that had the Donkey Kong Country 2 announcement in it, and a little preview. Like, those were the tomes I would keep on my knee to pass by the time on family vacations and even just trips about town, really, when I wanted to look at, like, renders of Donkey Kong. Because this was before you could just pull them up on your phone. Like, oh, yeah, I really want to stare at a render of, like, weird gorilla sausage fingers.
There's that classic Donkey Kong ass I love so much.
That's right. You couldn't just pull up the DK Vine Gallery or DKC Atlas or Super Mario Wiki back in the day. Those didn't exist in 1995. Nobody had smartphones. Those didn't exist. So the best thing you could do was carry around the publications with you. And luckily they were just resplendent. They were filled to the brim with these renders. So All that being said, I think we will actually do episodes in the future on the players' guides themselves, or even various iconic magazine issues of the DKU, like the magazine issues that help define our impressions of the DKU. But that's going to come later. I've got to spread out.
I'm so on board for all of it.
I've got to spread out the good ideas, Dustin. I can't just blow them all this season. We
can't have the money shot be all at once.
No, because then it's not a money shot. Then it's just gratuitous semen.
And even though that is the best kind, that's not what we're going for.
That's my band name.
Gratuitous semen. Put your hands together.
Yeah, just don't sit in the first few rows, because that's the splash zone.
See, that's a good gimmick. I think that would catch on, actually.
It would catch on, and then you would be arrested immediately, and then your band's over. But
I thought it would be fun.
We've introduced a lot of episode formats this season, I realize. Most of them came from the mind of Jeff Oden. This comes from my brain. Welcome to the first manual transmission episode of the Kongversation. Yay, it's a pun.
I'm glad you went for it, Hyle, because before we started recording this, I was thinking, I'm going to make a great joke about, I was going to say, usually on this show, I'm on auto, but today I'm on manual. But I decided not to because I thought it would be very bad. But I like when you do it.
No, I put it in the episode title. That's how committed I am to being very bad.
Awesome.
Before we get into it, though, let's get some due diligence done really quick. This is something that even instruction manuals had, Dustin. In the first couple pages and in the back, they had due diligence, all the various little warnings and don't play this game if you get seizures too much, or don't be copying this game if you don't want the feds breaking down your door.
Right. Or little warning saying the views within this manual belong to the individuals and not to Nintendo as a whole.
Whatever foul things Dan Owsen has to say in this manual, we wash our hands of it.
That is not on us.
Even though we hired him. We have no oversight. No, our due diligence, I'm going to keep it really short, really quick. We are on Blue Sky, which is now the hottest social media network. It's the new fresh kid on the block, but it's overtaken Threads. It's obviously overtaken the site formerly known as Twitter in new growth over the last month. And we've been on there since mid 2023. And it is now, I think, our primary social media outlet for DK Vine. So if you've been wondering, why hasn't Hyle tweeted anything in the last 10 days? I quiet quit Twitter. I'm sorry, but come over to Blue Sky. It's so
Blue
much
Sky's
better.
good.
It's so much better. I promise you. You can block people. They have block lists, so you can block all the people you would have to block one at a time. You can't. There's no algorithm, Dustin, so you can just see the people you follow and nothing but. But then there's also ways to discover like-minded people. It's just a smart way to do social media. It's like how social media used to be back in the day before the algorithm and the billionaires ruined it. But it's not without its faults, obviously, but it's really refreshing. I'm having a good time. I'm not going to say skeeting because I don't like skeeting, but I've been posting quite a bit. And just out of fun, not because, I have to do social media today. I have to do this. No, it's just I have some thoughts to say about Pipsy the Mouse from off of Diddy Kong Racing. And I'm going to say them. I don't care if it's 1:47 a.m. I'm going to post this right now because I want to, damn it.
Good for you, Hyle. And you know what? I think part of what's been making the Blue Sky thing fun is it's been a long, long time since there's been a new social media platform that's caught on. It's just kind of a fun feeling starting over, just being part of a fresh new place.
Yeah, it's really been great to see a lot of the creatives from Rare and Playtonic make the jump. And so every week there'll be somebody new coming over and you're like, oh, yay, Paul Makachek's here. Oh, yay. Well, he was the most recent one, so that was the tip of my brain. But he was one of
others.
Lee Loveday came over the other week. That was fun to see. And
nice.
then, of course, you had like the Rare and Playtonic accounts, and Rare is finally active on their main account. By the way, the reason they're on Blue Skies, I sent them an invite back in 2023.
Oh, look at Hyle over here.
I mean, they would have been on Blue Sky anyway, eventually, but
right.
That's why they got their account made so early. Anyway, yeah, so look us up on Blue Sky. And also, I've got my my domain name, dkvine.com, as my Blue Sky handle, so that's fun.
Good job, Hyle. You know what? You're killing it at this Blue Sky thing.
Thanks. I'm going to start doing some contests and giveaways like I used to do on Twitter. Like, follow us and retweet this, and you'll be entered to win this contest for this DKU junk. So look for that really soon. Also, hello to our patrons. We, of course, live stream these for our $5 and up patrons. And right now we have Me Muppet, March Rose. We have Josh Wallen from Off the Geek Critique in there. Hello, everyone. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. And yes, we are talking today about the Donkey Kong Country Manual, or the instruction booklet, if you will.
Yeah, whichever one you're more comfortable with. And Hyle, this really worked out because today there's nothing more I'd like to talk about than this.
What a relief.
I know, that would have sucked otherwise.
I had about a 1 in 365 chance that this would be the day of the year you would most want to talk about the Donkey Kong Country Manual. And I lucked out.
You nailed it. I don't know how, but you did.
I'm just good at this gambling thing.
You should take this to the big boys.
I'm gonna, as soon as we're done with this, I'm signing up for DraftKings or whatever.
You are my draft king, Hyle.
Oh, thank you. It's a great way to ruin my life, I'm sure. But let's talk really quick, though, about how important video game manuals, instruction booklets used to be. Now, Dustin, you're a little bit younger than me.
Just a tad.
A tad. You're a little tadpole with a little tail wiggling around.
That's me. I'm glad you noticed.
Were video game manuals still around when you were old enough to appreciate them?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Game manuals went a long time. So I did not have a Super Nintendo as a kid. I didn't get to enjoy these Super Nintendo manuals, but Sega Genesis games still had them. I had the Sonic 2 manual. It had the characters. It had like nice little illustrations of all the little enemy robots you could find.
Uh-huh.
I looked through that all the time. Lots of manuals that I really enjoyed. And then the N64, even better. Like, I love those manuals. To this day, I still have a lot of those manuals. I mean, some of them I had to replace over the years, but I liked them enough to want to replace them. I wanted to have a collection of these cool manuals.
You had to replace them because you sat in the first few rows of my band's performance.
That's true. No, so I used to have the Conker's Bad Fur Day manual because I had Conker's Bad Fur Day, of course.
Of course.
But I would bring it to school every day.
Uh-oh.
Because I was like, oh, I love this. It's great. And then, over time, you just have it in your binder and it gets messed up. The cover comes off, some pages get bent and folded and ruined, and I ended up having to throw it away. I said, that won't do. I am ordering a new one on eBay right now.
I thought you were going to say an administrator, confiscated it. Because they're like, you shouldn't have this, little boy.
Ew, what's up with these squirrels? They're like peeing and dying? No, thank you.
They're peeing and dying. Real squirrels actually do that, though.
Yeah, it's actually educational,
Actually. No, for me, video game manuals were a tradition, like a vital component to the experience, because like so many of my peers, like not necessarily online peers today, but childhood chums who I would associate with back in the day, they would never read the manual, right? They would get a new game or rent a game and they would just tear into it figure it out on the fly, never actually like crack open one single solitary page of the manual. But for me, it was like foreplay. It was like the prologue one has to read before getting to the main story. And
Right.
I couldn't imagine playing a game back in the day before reading the manual, because not only did you get the context, did you get the story, you also got, an idea of how to actually control things. Although I admit one of the things I would very rarely focus on with the manual would be studying like what the buttons do. I would never like really care about that as much, because for me, that would be intuitive if the game was good enough anyway. So
Right, you just get it.
Yeah.
You'll get it eventually anyway.
like there's one or two things that are probably worth gleaming from that. But for me, it was all about the story. It was all about the world building. I mean, I was pretty much the same then as I am now, as far as what I derive from a video game as far as enjoyment goes. Like, it's
Same.
not necessarily about gameplay. It's not about, showing off how skilled you are at mashing those buttons. It's all about the escapism. It's all about getting transported into a fantastical environment that you couldn't possibly achieve in your day-to-day life, or hopefully you wouldn't achieve, because it would be a nightmare actually living it. And like that
I'm being chased by these giant wasps in real life.
right. Yeah. No, thank you. So for me, it was all about like looking at the art, looking at, all the little nuggets of world building that maybe wouldn't be communicated in the game itself. And also really whetting your appetite, knowing what you're in for. And so, yeah, I would read an instruction manual front and back before I actually played the game. And sometimes that would mean I wouldn't play the game until the next day. If I rented a game, that probably wouldn't be the case, because you could only rent a game for 48 to 72 hours back then. So you would want to jump into it as quickly as possible, so you get through the manual quickly. But if it's a game I just got, and it's a game I'm really looking forward to, and might be like, okay, I got the game in the evening, right after school or whatever. So I'm going to spend the night reading the instruction manual, and then tomorrow the adventure begins. So I really miss video game manuals, Dustin. I think it's a lost art form. I think, even talking about when video game manuals were still being packaged within games, I think through the Wii they were still packaged in Nintendo games.
Even Wii U, I think they still had. I know Tropical Freeze had a manual,
but I know they had a digital manual at least. I can't remember.
Oh no, they had a physical. I got a physical Tropical Freeze.
It's been a while since I cracked open the Wii U Tropical Freeze case, but for me, they started really skimping on the manuals, and it really started becoming less and less interesting.
Only having the quote unquote necessary stuff.
And here, like being in the Americas, they would eventually put all the languages in there, so they wouldn't have to have, variations of manuals in different regions in the Americas. So you'd have the English, the Spanish, and the French all together, the three primary languages spoken in the Americas, or at least North America, of course, Portuguese if you get into South America. But, I like that all the languages are there. I understand it. We're a multicultural society. That's a good thing, but it does mean they had to reduce the pages. And
yeah, you just get less of the fun stuff, unfortunately.
Less of the art and less of the just little flourishes that I would love. So the glory days of manuals probably ended after the GameCube, after the Xbox 360.
I think that's right. That seems like when it really started. You started getting diminishing returns.
Right. Diminishing returns with Donkey Kong Country returns.
Hey!
I remember being very disappointed with that manual, but that's all well and good, but let's talk about the glory days. And let's talk a little bit about Daniel Owsen.
Okay.
Not Owsen, not OWL, as I'm pretty sure I misspelled his name in the past. Because I just thought it was an Owsen, like,
Right, the son of an owl.
Right. I mean, that's cool. That seems like somebody who would write a Donkey Kong Country manual, right? Like,
Yeah, that's awesome. It's obviously that.
it does kind of bug me in retrospect because we gave the fanon names to a lot of the Donkey Kong 64 NPCs, right? Because Rare couldn't be bothered to do it because Donkey Kong 64 was being time crunched to get out to November 22nd, 1999. And, they had to bring in the Banjo-Tooie team. They had to bring in the Conquer team to help, like, finish it off. And so nobody named the NPCs outside of a few, like, select NPCs. So the owl that you race, we named Hooter because an owl hoots, right?
That makes sense to me.
We should have named him Owsen after Dan Owsen.
Is it too late to change it?
I think it is because we've committed. We if we wanted to, we couldn't change those names now because we've been saying those are the names for 25 years, and we would look right foolish.
Right, and I would never admit wrongdoing.
No, I would never admit wrongdoing, and I would never want to look like a fool. And
yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
That's not gonna happen. I'm gonna be the coolest customer ever doing a podcast called The Kongversation for 12 years about the Donkey Kong universe. By the way, there hasn't been a new Donkey Kong game for 10 years.
Right, but we'll get there. Maybe.
It's my favorite thing in the world. How does a Donkey Kong podcast, and especially when they look at the episode numbers and they think that's just a chronological episode number. So how the hell have you had 1,245 episodes of the Donkey Kong podcast?
We just got a lot of love to give.
We do. We're talking about we're just now getting around to the Donkey Kong Country manual. Back off.
Yeah, we got material for years.
So Dan Owsen, we're going to call him Dan Owsen because that's how he was credited for much of his career. A translator at Nintendo of America, and he's known for a lot of different things. Kind of a jack of all trades. I think he's upper management now. I believe.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he is probably best known for different things depending on which fan circle you're in. So I know Zelda fans hold him up because he was one of the translators for the Zelda series, did the English translations. I think beginning with Link to the Past, I want to say. And
nice.
He's now credited with close to 100 games up to this year for Nintendo.
Wow.
And it is credited for, different roles. I think he's just credited nowadays as like management. But the irony is, though, he's most known for translating Zelda games if you're a Zelda fan. For Donkey Kong fans, he's most known for being the writer of a game that the studio was based in the UK. So he didn't do any translating for Donkey Kong Country, but he did do the game's manual. He's actually credited for manual and text in the actual Donkey Kong Country credits. Now,
okay.
This throws some people because Lee Loveday is the scholarly hand, the scribe, if you will, who I think is most commonly associated with the Donkey Kong Country series through the Rare era, right? People just assume it was Lee who did this game, but Lee actually jumped on with Donkey Kong Country 2's in-game text. And he's responsible for the story. Like, Donkey Kong gets kidnapped. That's Lee. But
masterful.
He is the Ernest Hemingway of the DKU. But
right.
Dan Owsen still did the manual for Donkey Kong Country 2. And that threw me when I figured it out because the manual for DKC2 is so close to Lee's style. And I feel like Dan Owsen started writing with more of an edge in that one that more closely matches Lee's very acidic kind of sense of humor that he brought to the Donkey Kong games. But Dan Owsen did the manual for DKC2, and I would argue that his contributions to these two manuals are kind of fundamental for the tone being set for the series at large. Like, Lee and others would later run with what Dan Owsen laid down. Dan Owsen walked so they could run, you know?
I was going to say that. I was going to do the walking and the running thing.
I did it for you. I ran.
Thank you, Hyle.
But I also walked.
This podcast is going to be easy.
Yeah. Well, we're going to read some of it verbatim, yes. So right. That part will be easy for sure. Because I did learn how to read, and then I immediately started reading manuals.
Thank God.
I know, right?
That would have made this podcast a lot harder.
So, it is funny to me that Dan Owsen is such an influential hand, because it's Nintendo of America influencing Rare. And we think so much of what Rare brought to the series and Rare's tone and tenor and identity. But Dan Owsen, I think, is one of the primary early architects of the DKU. And I do think some of the confusion...
Kind of an unsung one, too. Not a lot of people really bring up his contributions very often.
It's because, I mean, honestly, we haven't brought up his contributions nearly enough, probably. But...
True.
I do feel like some of the confusion between like what's established in game and what's said in some of the literature is kind of the result of this Nintendo of America Rare divide, because we mentioned this on our Destination DKU Vine Valley episode a few weeks back, but Dan Owsen seemed to have maybe slightly different ideas about Donkey Kong Island and the Kongs and the game's world than what Rare would really run with. Both like during this time, but also later on in later instruction manuals, later in-game text on Rareware, their website, which launched in 1998, and even what would be established by Retro Studios later on, based on what Rare established in their games. For example, I feel like the confusion between Donkey Kong being Cranky's son or Donkey Kong being Cranky's grandson is an artifact of this Owsen/NOA and Loveday/Rare divide. And maybe it's not. Maybe this is just me assuming things, making an old ass out of you and me. But I think that when Lee really had full control over the creative voice of Donkey Kong, which was probably around Donkey Kong 64, right? Because he did the manual for Donkey Kong 64. I feel like that's when they really pushed for Donkey Kong being an adult Donkey Kong Jr., being his son. And they kind of just let the grandson stuff in the past, which I think maybe came from Dan Owsen, maybe on the knowledge that originally the character of Cranky Kong was the original Donkey Kong's grandfather, before they did the whole generational shift. And so I think wires got crossed there, and that's why we have the discrepancy that we're still trying to make sense of to this day. And
well, isn't there also that story that, and I don't know if this is 100% confirmed or not, maybe it is, but wasn't the story that Diddy was originally being planned to be DK Jr. as well?
Oh, that is 100% confirmed. Yeah, Diddy was Donkey Kong Jr., a redesigned Donkey Kong Jr., albeit not a monkey. He was just basically a lankier, skinnier gorilla who had the like red tank top and hat. And
maybe that's part of it too. Maybe that lent to some of the confusion, just some various early ideas that didn't go through.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that Dan was privy to, or because obviously when you change the character from Donkey Kong Jr. to Diddy Kong, you know that's not Donkey Kong Jr. anymore. But yeah, I think but Dan Owsen clearly knew that Cranky was the original Donkey Kong because it comes up quite a bit in the instruction manual. So I don't know, but I think Owsen's work on this manual is still phenomenal, and it perfectly set the tone for Donkey Kong Country's style, its attitude, its perspective, its kind of meta-textual, fourth wall breaking mirth. It really did communicate to anybody who bothered to read it exactly what kind of game and what kind of attitude not only Donkey Kong Country would have, but Rare would really have throughout their whole tenure with Nintendo into the Xbox years. And, Platonic kind of runs with to this day.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that.
So we have...
It's that tone is what kind of gets us sucked in.
It does. And it's the tone I'm still a fan of to this day.
Same.
So we have read this story verbatim on the Kongversation in the past. I know we have. But we've got to do it again. Because...
Okay. You know what, Hyle? I'm down to do it again.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've ever done it, Dustin. So this will be a fresh treat to, I don't know, have your voice added to the famous Donkey Kong Country instruction manual story. And like I said, we're not going to read the entire manual verbatim. We are going to read parts of it verbatim, the parts that I feel like are worth reading as is. We're going to summarize some other stuff. We're going to kind of just blow past some of the more dry stuff, but I do recommend, if you've never actually looked at the Donkey Kong Country manual, to do so, to follow along with us while you listen to this podcast. And here's the great thing, because I know a lot of you won't have it at hand, right? You might have it from 30 years ago. You might have found it via, getting it used, eBay, wherever. But you can read it right now in high quality because Nintendo of Japan has the PDF file for the Donkey Kong Country instruction manual, the US edition of the instruction manual on their website. All you have to do is search Donkey Kong Country PDF, and it's the first thing that will come up. And it's high resolution, it's glorious quality. Do it right now. You can save it to your device.
Do it right now or you are grounded.
It's worthy to have digitally as well as physically, but
for sure.
Yeah, this is one of those episodes where everybody can follow along because it is readily, legally accessible via Nintendo. They have preserved this one for some reason, and I'm so glad
that's
they
nice
did.
of them.
Yeah, I know, right? So it was a dark and stormy night is what this story is titled in the instruction manual. And by the way, the entire design of this instruction manual, it's not consistent. Each different section, each different section has a different design element. It has a different type of heading, type of background. It is the most garish, wild instruction manual of its time.
I was thinking exactly that because the manual for DKC2, they really did find an aesthetic they can stick to for it. This one's all over the place.
It's all over the place. It's so loud. It's very much like a 1990s Trapper Keeper design.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Even just that page with the table of contents, you go from that right into the "it was a dark and stormy night" part. Completely different.
Yeah, I had never seen a manual like this where you are always thrown off your game reading it because the style of the fonts would change, from page to page. And I was used to the instruction manuals being a little bit more dry and matter of fact. And even in the backgrounds of this manual, it is just some of it makes your eyes bleed, but I don't think that's a bad thing. And maybe that's just me being a 90s kid, but I do really, really like that this is just so outrageous. It looks like a Nickelodeon magazine.
That's a great way to put it.
So
some of these pages I think look really good. These story pages, that aesthetic of green, black, and purple. That's such a cool look to me and always has been.
And they've also got the silhouette of Donkey Kong's head on the first 2-page spread in the background. Yeah,
staring down at a very frightened Diddy Kong.
Yeah, it looks like Donkey Kong is trying to scare his own sidekick. And then on the second 2-page spread, they have a silhouette of Clump. So,
yeah, right behind Cranky. Cranky's saying he's right behind me, isn't he?
I sense luscious nipples poking at my neck.
Oh, I love it. So I should get reading this story for us?
Well, yeah. How do you want to break this down? Because there is some dialogue. There is some, a lot of narration. So should we just keep it simple? Maybe you read the first 2-page spread and I'll read the second 2-page spread.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Okay.
All right. It was a dark and stormy night. Storms lashed the rugged terrain of Donkey Kong Island, home of the famous video game ape and his family and friends. Near Donkey Kong's treehouse, a small monkey named Diddy cowered in fear of the savage lightning which periodically illuminated the lush, dark jungle that covered most of the island. Donkey Kong had assigned Diddy to guard duty on this awful night, and he was not happy about his fate. Donkey Kong's earlier pep talk kept creeping back into Diddy's mind. "Okay, little buddy," Donkey had said in his patronizing voice.
Ouch.
Donkey Kong's classic patronizing voice.
Well, yeah, so this is the very first dialogue we've ever seen of the modern Donkey Kong. And little buddy is a term of endearment I've internalized in my mind. Like what Donkey calls Diddy. Like little buddy, right? Like, and I think that was probably taken from the skipper, what he called Gilligan in Gilligan's Island, which probably would have been Dan Owsen's jam when he was a kid. But I look at this now and I'm like, oh, he was being sarcastic. Okay, little buddy.
Little buddy.
Piece of shit.
Yeah, because going forward, like, yeah, I agree. I always just saw it as like just a actual term of endearment he would call Diddy. Part of it's from the cartoon. That's what he called him all the time in the cartoon.
One of the things I actually liked about the cartoon back in the day was
it's just him being a friend.
Yeah. So again, some of this kind of flies in the face of later established canon, even the canon within the game itself. So keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Okay. As part of your hero training, you've got to stand guard tonight over my bananas. I'll relieve you at midnight, so try and stay awake until then. Buddy? Yeah, right. Now he was alone. Alone unless you counted the unknown threats which lurked behind every tree that he glimpsed during the lightning flashes. The Kremlings were out there. This much was certain. They coveted Donkey Kong's banana stockpile, the largest on the island and probably in the world. A treasure in potassium and vitamin A, the perfect food. Ah, delicious bananas. The thought of DK's golden hoard almost made Diddy forget his uncomfortable situation.
Okay, can I just also point out, can I really quick, Dan Owsen spells hoard wrong throughout this entire manual.
That's fine. I feel like I go back and forth on whether or not how to spell a hoard too. I never remember exactly what it is.
Yeah, he spells it H-O-R-D-E, which is not like a hoard, a stockpile. It's like Genghis Khan sending his forces after you.
Right.
So yeah, like, again, like, there's no dictionary.com back in the day. There's no spell check that would underline that for him. Like, you know, Grammarly saying, like, oh, Dan Owsen, did you mean hoard?
Oh, yeah, you're right. I did mean hoard. It's also a word that just doesn't come up super often in regular conversation.
It doesn't. The whole reason hoard has been internalized in my brain is because of Donkey Kong.
Okay, where was I? I was at the thought of DK's golden hoard almost made Diddy forget his uncomfortable situation. But a rustling in the undergrowth and the sound of several snapping twigs brought him out of his reverie.
Wow.
Who goes there? Diddy challenged the sounds in the darkened, dripping foliage. There was no answer but the flashing of claws and teeth, followed by a fleeting vision of many reptilian eyes and a crack of thunder. Holy crap, this is some intense visuals. The foliage isn't the only thing dripping right now. The prose is just
soaked.
There was no answer, but I already did that part. I'm losing my spot. There I am. A crack of thunder. Diddy somersaulted into the fray with his signature cartwheel attack, but he was quickly overcome by the weight of many scaly assailants. The enormous bulk of Clump. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interject again. I love that Diddy hasn't been in a single video game, that he's just this, like, hanger-on for Donkey Kong, that Donkey Kong is humoring. And he already has a signature attack, and it's the cartwheel.
Yeah, Diddy's classic cartwheel. Who could forget? We all know. The enormous bulk of Clump the Kremling landed on top of Diddy, knocking him senseless. His last memory was of a hissing voice. "It's the small one. Seal him inside this barrel and toss it into the bushes. Donkey Kong's bananas are ours." They really made sure to get all of the possible words with S's in them.
Yeah, although the way, like, they added the S's at the end of bananas, and luckily they thought to put 3 S's and not 2, because it almost looks like banana-ass. Banana-ass, which would be a great Donkey Kong character, by the way. You can have that for free, Nintendo.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like we would have been talking about this manual a lot, like years prior, if they had that in there.
Yep.
The barrel lid closed on Diddy, blotting out even the fleeting light of the storm. Seconds later, the barrel flew through the air courtesy of Clump's army boot-assisted punt.
Wow.
And landed roughly in the jungle foliage. Diddy Kong knew no more. Even Clump has a signature attack. Clump's army boot-assisted punt.
Yeah. Jeez.
Where's his playable spot in Smash Brothers?
I know. Sakurai, you really shit the bed on that one.
Hey, maybe he'll listen to the podcast and be like, you know what? Clump, we should get him in there.
Yeah, he's one of our loyal patrons for sure.
The entire Donkey Kong clan was oblivious as the Kremlings then loaded the banana horde into their Kremling carts and wheeled them off through the jungle, leaving an obvious trail of dropped fruit from their overloaded conveyances.
I love this, like, little
Kremling carts,
little wagons, little red wagons.
See, I was picturing it as like a. You know that, of course you remember that scene in Super Smash Bros. Brawl where the Koopa Troopas are stealing the bananas. I thought of them as kind of like that, like little cars they can load bananas into. But, little red wagons works too.
Oh, it's like the mini car from Donkey Kong 64. It's just a bunch of those.
Yeah. Yeah. See, they planned this out ahead of time.
Exactly. The DKU was meticulously plotted from the beginning. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And they're like, oh, we didn't plan for Diddy Kong Racing to be a Diddy Kong game. Oh, we didn't plan to make a shared universe. Liars! Explain the Kremlin carts then.
Yeah, checkmate. The next morning, Donkey Kong was awakened by frantic shouting of his name. "Keep it down," he growled, suddenly realizing what time it was. Man, they're really making DK sound like an asshole in this opening.
Yeah, fuck this guy.
Morning already. I slept through my watch. Falling out of bed and through his treehouse door, Donkey Kong slid down the treehouse ladder without using any of the rungs and assumed his characteristic fighting pose with sun-blinded squinting eyes. One swift blow was all that was needed to leave him sprawled on the floor, face down. He groggily rolled over to see the familiar, wrinkled, white-bearded, grouchy face of his old granddad, Cranky Kong, peering down at him. In his heyday, Cranky was the original Donkey Kong who battled Mario in several of his own games.
Yeah, so, really quick, I always took that paragraph where Donkey Kong wakes up. He says he's falling out of bed and through his treehouse door. So I always imagine...
looking at his watch.
Yeah, well, I always imagine him falling out of bed and just rolling across the floor all the way out his door And he just keeps going.
Yeah, see, they say he didn't use any of the rungs on the ladder because he just rolled over the ledge and fell off.
Well, I also wonder how much of this is Dan Owsen interpreting the opening of Jungle Hijinks when Donkey Kong burst out of his treehouse. And then you can go in the Banana Horde cave and see it's empty, but that doesn't quite work with, like, that doesn't quite square away with what happens in the second 2-page spread. And also, it's worth pointing out that the Donkey Kong Country Game Boy Advance remake basically brought this story into the game itself, but they realigned a few things. So the actual canonical version of this doesn't involve Clump saying those lines. It's Critters saying it, I think, and it was Crusha.
Clump erasure.
Yeah, it's Crusha who is the one who really knocks Diddy out. And then
which makes sense.
And then you got like Cranky Kong sort of confronting Donkey Kong in his treehouse. But also, yeah, did Cranky Kong knock out Donkey Kong with one punch?
I guess so.
Yeah, because he says one swift blow was all that was needed to leave him sprawled on the floor face down.
Yeah, maybe Cranky isn't bullshitting when he says he can do all this stuff.
It's just fucking Batman and Guy Gardner for all you DC fans out there.
Yeah, if he wanted to, he could just go out and stop K. Rool at any moment with a single punch.
Where's his spot in Smash?
Yeah, come on.
It's also worth pointing out that they do name drop Mario here, and then that's it. And that's all you get from Mario for the rest of this experience.
Yeah, he's part of the history, but he's not important to the story. We'll just mention him the once.
In his heyday, Cranky was the original Donkey Kong who battled Mario in several of his own games. The end.
There it is,
Moving
right
forward.
there.
We don't need to focus on it. Right. All right, so I will take over from here.
Okay.
All right. And the dialogue-heavy portion of it, great. All right. What'd you do that for? Donkey Kong asked, knowing full well that Cranky was prone to cuffing him at every whim. Yes.
Oh my god.
Yes, your father/grandfather beat you. This was acceptable in the 90s.
Maybe it's a gorilla thing.
Take a look inside your banana cave. You're in for a big surprise. Cranky cackled.
What a dick.
Donkey's mind raced as he vaulted to the cave and peered inside. Instead of the dull golden glow of thousands of bananas, and I think that's the first time we've ever got a numerical estimation of his bananas. Like the only time we've ever gotten that. There were only a few discarded peels. These had been trampled into the dirt by hundreds of reptilian feet, judging from the many three-toed footprints that covered the damp cavern floor. But what about... Diddy's gone too, Cranky laughed. That's what you get for shirking your responsibility, you good-for-nothing bum. In my days, we would have been happy to stand guard in the rain, 'cause that might have meant having an extra frame of animation. Of course, having rain would have been impossible, given our pitiful processing power, but... Donkey Kong stood there in stunned disbelief, and hadn't heard most of what Cranky said. Diddy, gone, my little buddy, he murmured to himself. So there, little buddy was much more endearing. And at that point, that's Donkey Kong's heroic origin. This is when he stops being a dick.
Yeah, he's like, I need to grow up and be the hero the world needs.
I got a child abducted. Oopsie doodles. Yeah.
It happens.
Donkey Kong was suddenly filled with conviction. The Kremlings will pay. I'm just doing Batman now? I don't know why.
The Kremlings will pay.
The Kremlings will pay! He raged. I want them down through every corner of my island till I have every last banana for my horde back.
I love that idea of DK sounding like that talking about bananas.
Find your little buddy and retrieve a bunch of bananas. Cranky snorted. What kind of game idea is that? Where's the screaming damsel in distress? Screaming.
Something I like about this story is so over the years I feel like it's been conditioned to expect like this sort of fourth wall breaking from Rare and not necessarily from Nintendo themselves, but here's Dan Owsen's story. It's just full of it. It's full of these little crankyisms talking about the good old days of video games, the extra frame of animation. It's just not the kind of thing I would expect from someone more in-house at Nintendo. Not that they couldn't. I just, you don't see that a lot.
The thing is, people forget how much in concert Nintendo of America worked with Rare for Donkey Kong Country. It was basically, their conviction that led Nintendo to Rare, showing off the Silicon Graphics workstations, and Nintendo of America really did run point on a lot of this. Ken Lobb and really helped foster this relationship with Rare. So Donkey Kong Country is a vitally important game to the history of NOA as much as it is Rare. I mean, NOA, that's where they got the Treehouse name from, right? So,
right.
Anyway, but it is kind of like great to see just right here in the text of the story, just the fourth wall breaking, the hanging a lampshade on the fact that this plot is dumb. We know it's dumb. That's kind of the point. This is sort of a postmodern video game storytelling. Video game characters who know they're in a video game, who comment on the changing nature of video games as they were in 1994. All great stuff. I wish it's stuff that the series really held on to in the retro era. They kind of shirked away from that and kind of downplayed most of that with Returns and Tropical Freeze. Not that I don't love Returns and Tropical Freeze, but you know what I mean? That
maybe
wasn't
that's
there.
part of what's thrown me off. Maybe I've just... Over the years, Nintendo themselves have just moved so far away from that being a part of the series. It's a little surprising to see someone from Nintendo go all in on it here.
This was also the Play It Loud era of Nintendo of America, so they were a little bit more extreme and in your face back then. I think they got defanged a little bit going into the GameCube era, and everything sort of had a more worldwide identity at that point with Nintendo.
Right.
And, it fluctuates here or there, but I don't think this kind of outrageous variation in presentation is necessarily what Nintendo would have stuck with, but it was very important in adopting this new attitude for the Play It Loud years, where they finally slayed the beast that was Sega Genesis and briefly reclaimed their market share before PlayStation would just basically steal it from them forever. Yeah. But I mean, Nintendo's doing all right. I mean, they found their niche, but they are kind of like the alternative, the forever alternative, and they have their loyal fandom, and it's enough to keep them a viable, successful, profitable company. But back in the 80s into the 90s, I mean, that they were video games in the West, right? It was Nintendo, and then it was Sega and Nintendo, and then Nintendo really came back fighting, really came back swinging with Donkey Kong Country and this sort of rebranding of their ethos into the N64 years. But anyway, all right, where were we? All right.
Damsel in distress.
Damsel in distress.
That whole thing.
Screaming damsel in distress. Cranky is a feminist, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Diddy's obsession with being like me has gone too far. He may be a long way from being a true video game hero, but he had the guts, the reflexes, the heart. If you ask me, neither of you are ready for prime time, Cranky interrupted. You'll never be as popular a character as I was. He's just a grizzled old prospector. You gotta have to roll with it, Dustin.
Yeah.
Why, in my heyday, kids lined up to play my games. The quarters were stacked on the machine as they waited for their turn. If you go on this ridiculous adventure, you'll be lucky to sell 10 copies. Donkey Kong fumed. He usually Cranky's rambling roll off his back, but this time was different. What do you know about venturing, you flea-bitten old ape? Yelled Donkey Kong, edging closer and closer. braving Cranky's cane until he was totally in his face. Gratuitous semen. Woo!
There it is.
I'm sick of hearing about your boring single-screen adventures. Diddy's in trouble, my banana horde is gone, and I'm gonna get them all back. Another point.
Interesting seeing DK like stand up to Cranky Kong. I don't think that's something we see very often. He just kind of takes it a lot of the time.
It's also wild to see in this era. Kind of lightly bashing the original Donkey Kong arcade game.
Yeah. That's old stuff, Grandpa.
Which is just, like, verboten nowadays. Forbidden, right? Because you wouldn't bash that game because it is Miyamoto's original masterpiece. It is the foundation for everything that came after. And if you wonder why, like, the Donkey Kong Country generation, like the OG Donkey Kong Country generation, kind of had that mentality of like it's us versus the arcade era. It was subconsciously planted in our brains by Dan Owsen. And like I look back at it, it's like, no, you would embrace everything nowadays. But there was this generational divide baked into the plot of Donkey Kong Country, which seems kind of shocking with today's mindset.
A little bit, yeah. It's not the kind of thing you would do, because you just wouldn't want to belittle a part of the brand as a whole. You wouldn't want to say like, oh, this part's bad, this part's good. Nowadays, you just want to say like, no, the whole thing is good. We want you to enjoy all of Donkey Kong.
And I don't think they were actually saying the original Donkey Kong was bad, but they were just saying like how far video games have come and how kids today, or kids in 1994, might not like view the original Donkey Kong with any great interest. But that's still not the direction you would go after this. And, I mean, honestly, I'm surprised they did that because it does seem like a slight towards Miyamoto. It seems like they are, like, doing some turf wars here. If you chose to read it in that antagonistic light, I think it's just the character sniping. But at the same time, I think back even to Diddy Kong Pilot's 2003 build, like post-buyout, and the like Cranky Kong mode in Diddy Kong Pilot had the girders in the background, but they were covered in cobwebs. Just like, this is old, this is outdated, and here we are 30 years later talking about Donkey Kong Country's instruction manual when the original Donkey Kong was only 13 years before this. So,
jeez,
perspective there. Yeah. Anyway, Donkey Kong stormed off in search of his missing buddy. Following the trail of bananas the Kremlings had dropped. Well, it's not exactly rescuing a princess, but it'll do in a pinch, Cranky snorted as DK disappeared into the lush jungle. After a moment's hesitation, Cranky followed him. The lad may just need my help, he mumbled to himself. Kids today, they just don't have any respect for their elders.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. So, I also want to point out, too, because Dan Owsen in the Donkey Kong Country Exposed VHS, which he prominently appeared in, he keeps calling Donkey Kong Kong. He keeps trying to get that going, like Kong. Donkey Kong we just call him Kong. He is Kong.
We can just call him Kong for short.
But here in the manual story, he calls him Donkey Kong, he calls him Donkey, he calls him DK. Like, all of the different variations of Donkey's name are in there from the start. So, it's interesting because I am very much of the generation that called him Donkey. Like, the pre-Donkey Kong Country cartoon generation. I would call him Donkey and Diddy. DK really became, I think, the preferred nomenclature for those who like discovered the Donkey Kong Country cartoon first, or in later games where like maybe the Mario crossover games where Donkey Kong would just be labeled as DK. I think DK is more popular nowadays, but it's all in here in the manual story.
Yeah, it's like take your pick.
Take your pick. No wrong choices here.
I'm a DK guy. I call him DK, but, you know, if you call him any of those, you get it. You know who they're talking about.
Yeah. Hello again in the live stream, just checking in. We've got Josh Wallen from Out the Geek Critique having some insight on instruction manuals. Says, love the Sonic 2 manual. Whoosh! He was spinning like Sonic. I know the fact that none of my friends ever read their manuals blew my mind as a kid. I knew more about their games than they did sometimes because I read the manual. It's how I held my own against older kids at GoldenEye. They had no idea you could strafe. They had no idea who James Bond was.
Who is this guy?
Wait, this guy? This guy's our hero? They had no idea he slept with all the sexy ladies. Like, all those sexy ladies in the game, in the multiplayer. Yeah, he slept with all of them.
Wow, he's cool.
Yeah, except Judi Dench, but she wasn't playable.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. Fujiro, or Fuj11Ro, I still don't know how to say that, sorry, says, I always thought it's funny how the intro text made Diddy's kidnapping a huge deal, but then he's found almost immediately. Thank you.
Yeah, the story here really plays up the Diddy being kidnapped part, and it only, like, kind of touches on the bananas part.
I wonder if that was done to give the player this immediate sense of victory. Like, oh, you have this huge discouraging moment. The bananas are gone. But then almost immediately, like, not almost immediately, like, right after you exit the cave, well, there's Diddy in the barrel, and you break him open. Now you have Diddy back. Okay.
You did it. Good job.
I'm not really sure why they focused on that. I mean, it makes sense, and it does justify the DK barrels, at least at the very outset of the game. Like, I don't really think the manual doesn't do a good job of explaining why the DK barrels continue to be a thing, other than, I guess, the Kremlings grab you when you get hit and they chuck you in a barrel, and then, like, it is good, like, logic, or it's good for video game logic of the era, right? Or really any era, let's be honest.
It's timeless.
So it does seem like that's always been weird to, like, focus on the Diddy kidnapping when that's not really part of the story of Donkey Kong Country. Like, we don't even say Diddy was ever kidnapped in the trilogy, except until Donkey Kong Country 3. But, yeah, I think it was just a large part of, like, establishing why DK barrels are a thing. And it just got a lot of ink for some reason.
I think part of it is also it kind of gives you a little bit higher stake, something a little more to care about in this story than just they stole a bunch of bananas.
Yeah, it does, because the bananas are kind of a piss take.
Yeah,
that's always been my interpretation of the banana heist. It's honestly like subverting, like, oh, like a princess is getting kidnapped, somebody's getting kidnapped. It's the most actually low stakes thing a kid could imagine is a bunch of produce gets taken. But it kind of...
maybe for the manual, if they're, like, trying to get you hyped up, though, they're like, well, this is funny, but we got to give you, like, something actual to care about. Okay, Diddy gets kidnapped.
Yeah. So I think it walks that line fairly well. And again, Diddy isn't really kidnapped. He's just chucked in the bushes outside the treehouse.
Yeah, we don't actually want to take him anywhere.
Like, they didn't take him back to the Gangplank Galleon or anything. They didn't tie him up and beat him with the blunderbuss, like, hilt or anything. They just put him in a barrel. And then you're like, oh,
just toss him over there. Who cares?
You know, maybe if they, like, tossed those barrels off a cliff or something, they could have really just solved all their problems.
Yeah, they really should have thought ahead a little bit.
Like, stick some dynamite in the barrel? I don't know. Set it on fire?
Yeah, nobody's here to stop. It would be so easy to just do this.
Just drown the little sucker?
Yeah, throw him in the ocean.
Of course, at DK Vine, we came up with the fan and patch, if you will, of the Kremlin curse, which they don't physically put them in the barrels after this, like, initial story. They just curse them, so if they, like, get touched by a Kremlin crew member, they immediately get transported into a barrel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that works.
Yeah, so,
I guess.
So yeah, it works. And then, of course, the Tiki Tak tribe and Snowmads would later, like, hack into the Kremlin curse and exploit that.
Of course.
Of course. They know how to hack the curses.
Does anyone here have curse hacking skills? Yeah, I can do that.
It's like the Doctor Strange thing. They just swirl their hands around and make little sparkly dews. And
I actually went to college for this sort of thing. I got this down.
So the getting started and controller function pages. We're not going to read this verbatim, don't worry. But I did want to touch upon some of the tone and tenure of the text in these very dry sections, because even this kind of has a little bit of attitude. So under getting started, it says, we made this game super easy to get into. Plug the cartridge into your Super NES. Turn the power on. Watch the demo for as long as you like. Press start when you're ready to get into the game. Talk about...
Oh, they're really welcoming.
Talk about patronizing. That seems like they're just kind of you dumb shit. All right, here's what you do. You see the way this can fit into that hole? Put it in the hole. All right? Now put power. See that button? All right, press up on it. All right, now the power's on.
That's how I learned how sex making works.
Yeah. I really want to see Dan Owsen write the complete idiot's guide to sex.
So you put the Donkey Kong Country cartridge into the SNES slot, and then, 9 months later.
Yeah, let's try to use a euphemism, but related to Stop and Swap if you don't want to have a baby. So, under the, gameplay modes, you've got this image of the map screen, right? And it's helpfully labeled. So
helpfully in quotes.
So
one of these is wrong.
It's wrong, and this always threw me as a kid, Dustin. So they have the second screen of the Congo jungle diagrammed here, and there's an arrow pointing to Funky's flights, and it says Funky Kong. There's an arrow pointing to Candy's save point, and it says Candy Kong. There's an arrow pointing to Donkey and Diddy at Barrel Cannon Canyon, and it says your position. And then there's an arrow pointing to nothing that says Kremlings with an exclamation mark.
Wow, there's the Kremlings.
And the Kremlings are, it's pointing to them right above Candy's head. And
yeah,
so
are the Kremlings there, right there?
Well, I thought that there was a critter on the map screen of the Congo jungle, hiding in the bushes going, ah hee hee hee, ah hee hee hee. They don't see me. I thought, I squinted. I remember squinting at this page, Dustin, and I was like, I don't see it. Maybe I see a claptrap there if I squint really hard. I see this green blob, but it could just be the green of the jungle. I don't know. I think they were going to point to the Kremlin head for the very naughty boss fight.
Yeah, it's up there.
But they're
not.
They got the arrow wrong. And so
yeah,
in my head, I still think maybe there is a Kremlin hiding just above Candy's save point in the bushes. And
maybe I'm the problem.
Maybe we just don't know because we've never really seen it in high enough detail.
That's probably it. We're the ones at fault, Hyle.
So that's not my favorite diagram though, because that's on the game screen page, because they have a picture of Donkey Kong jumping and there's a critter next to him, and they put an arrow pointing at Donkey Kong and it says you, and they put an arrow pointing at the Kremlin. They got it right this time, and it says Kremlin.
They were like, shit, we fucked up the last one. We'll get it right this time.
It's wait, which one's Donkey Kong? Slow down.
You're going a mile a minute here.
Explain it to me like I'm 4. Which I almost think that's tongue in cheek. I almost think that's just a piss take, to fit the general vibe of this instruction manual, of the marketing for this game. It's do we really need to explain this to you, you dumb shit?
Yeah, you get it. You know what a video game is.
However, the most memorable part of this page is what's beneath it for me, because this inadvertently or not, sums up the entire Greg Malesian design philosophy, or at least visual design philosophy. Because it says, where's the score bar, life meter, speedometer? Scrolled off the screen where they belong. That's where. When you do collect bananas, an extra life, or other goodies, the indicator symbol will momentarily scroll onto the screen. And then explains what some of the symbols are. But just that, like, notion that, hey, video games, most of the HUDs suck for those because they just clutter up the visuals. I would never have been indoctrinated in that philosophy had it not been for this little paragraph here, explaining to child me why that was actually a bad thing and every video game before this sucked ass.
Yeah, you know what? We don't have those classic speedometers you see in every other video game.
Well, okay, so when I was a kid and I read this, what I immediately thought of was the P meter in Super Mario Bros. 3.
I'm glad you said Super Mario Bros. 3, because when you said P meter, I was like, what game has like a piss meter?
Conker's Bad Fur Day. It hadn't come out yet, but
that's true.
I was hopeful that we would get a peen squirrel game.
Someday.
No, I think I obviously have been on the record.
That has to be what they mean, right?
I mean,
or like a racing game.
A racing game, but when you think of a 2D platformer, I think that's what I thought of, right? And
yeah.
I've been on the record how Super Mario Bros. 3 is actually one of my least favorite of the original Mario games, especially compared to Super Mario Bros. 2 or Super Mario World. I just don't like artistic decisions that game made. And I realize I'm in the minority, and probably rightfully so, but I wonder how much of that retroactively is this little dig with the speedometer thing. And I'm like, yeah, fucking P meter.
You stupid P meter. Get out of here.
And of course, whether or not Dan Owsen was actually like vibing with Greg Mayles here or not, this does really sum up a lot of the way Greg Mayles goes about designing his games, and the games he's a team member on, up to and including Sea of Thieves, where they try to keep elements that are intrusive or really kind of take you out of the immersion to a minimum. So spot on, Dan Owsen. You really got to one of the hearts of why I am a Rare fan. So thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. So
and you know what?
Yeah.
Thanks for all the work you did in Hot News 64 as well.
Oh, Hot News 64. I hate that one.
I know.
Why don't you read the next paragraph that I've excised for us, Dustin? It's kind of on this theme, talking about why Donkey.
Which one? The basic controller functions one?
The controller function. Yeah, why Donkey Kong Country is superior to all those other shit games that came out before it.
Okay, I'll read that. The controller functions in Donkey Kong Country are basic, so you can concentrate on enjoying the game's graphics, sound, and gameplay, rather than trying to remember which button does a spin jump or backwards double combination flip. You can probably figure out the controls yourself, but for your reference, here are the button functions. Some moves will only work in certain situations.
Yeah, just the... it's these fucking games where you can do all these fancy la-di-da somersaults and dismounts. You don't want that shit in here. We're keeping it simple. It's the purity of gameplay that is Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah, I mean, this is going so into different territory, but that is a reason why I don't gel with traditional 2D fighting games.
Same.
Stuff like Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. I totally get the appeal of them. I am just not good at doing these button combos for them.
It almost feels like math, but math for the fingers. But not like if you're using a calculator.
Oh, thank you, Hyle. I was confused for a second.
For me, it does. Like when I have to think about what I need to do on the controllers, when it's not just intuitive, when it's not just second nature. And sure, you can get good enough at those games where it is second nature, but I could never reach that threshold. I could never cross it. So
Yeah.
for me, I did go through that fighting game phase where I liked playing Street Fighter 2 Turbo Edition and Mortal Kombat, and Killer Instinct to a lesser extent during this era. But for me, it was always just a bar I couldn't clear. And so for me, like,
Same.
the only way I could really enjoy it was like looking at the characters and the environments and basically wailing on a second player, like in 2-player mode, but without like, so they're not fighting back, and I could just beat on them like they were a dummy.
This game's fun and easy.
Wow, I'm so good at fighting.
People are not gonna want to fight me.
I'm gonna start a gang.
Just go totally off script. I'm gonna start a gang. We're gonna start robbing places.
It's gonna be like West Side Story, but without the singing.
Nobody's gonna mess with me.
So the profiles for Donkey and Diddy go into all their moves and whatever, but I don't want to get into all of that. I just want to read the introductory paragraphs for Donkey and Diddy. I'll do Donkey.
Okay.
You can do Diddy.
Sounds good.
I love that for Donkey Kong's profile, they have him in like a profile shot, right? Like in a little oval. He's got his headshot there.
Mm-hmm.
And it says the star, Donkey Kong. And it's like emblazoned with so many stars.
Once again, a completely different aesthetic from what we had seen in the manual up to now.
Almost bejeweled, like a rhinestone jacket, like Donkey Kong. And yeah, like the text is just like outrageous. It's orange. It's like an orange gradient on a purple star, and with like black stars around it. It's like what the hell?
Yeah.
Anyway,
What's happening here?
So this is what it says about Donkey Kong: the king of swing. Hey, call forward. Because there would be a game called DK King of Swing later on.
Oh, I get it. I get what you're going for.
Actually, Payon should have just followed this for all the sequels. It should have been King of Swing, then it should have been DK Thrilla Gorilla, and then it should have been
Thrilla Gorilla would sell millions.
DK Prime Primate, but they just went with Jungle Climber, so it's fine. All right.
It's fine, I guess.
The King of Swing, the Thrilla Gorilla, the Prime Primate. It's Donkey Kong, but this is not your father's Donkey Kong. Yeah, fuck you, Dad. Although he is a relative of the classic arcade character, Country's Donkey Kong is a totally new character with a new look, new moves, and a new attitude. So this is, I think, part of the root of the controversy over whether or not he's an adult Donkey Kong Jr., because opponents of that will point to this Donkey Kong is a totally new character as evidence that he is not, in fact, Donkey Kong Jr. However, I would argue you can look through the rest of this instruction manual and find lots of little tidbits that would suggest otherwise, given the fact that he is an established hero that Diddy Kong looks up to, which I feel like is a core pillar of Diddy Kong's character. And maybe that's why I gravitate more to the current Donkey Kong being an adult Donkey Kong Jr., because I'm at my heart of hearts a Diddy Kong main. And so I really view the series through the prism of his character arc. I understand.
Well,
it could go both ways, and they really do hedge their bets here because they say he is a relative of the classic arcade character, even though he's called, like Cranky's called his grandpappy elsewhere. And
he could be related in any way.
Could be his auntie. He could be a fourth cousin.
Third cousin. Yeah. Fourth cousin, actually.
Could be his pet.
I don't think that's right.
Could be his like a little sea monkey tank. We don't know.
Right. He keeps him in a little fish bowl.
Yeah. So, also the dig, this is not your father's Donkey Kong. So, let's do the math really quick here. Let's say your father played Donkey Kong when he was 8 years old. That means he had you. He's 21 in, he's 21 in 1994 then. And which means he had you, If you're old enough to play Donkey Kong Country, he probably had you at least by the time he was, we'll say charitably 18. No, 17. 17. We'll say 17. Because you're probably not 3 years old playing this, but you might be 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you might be.
I can't do math with my fingers, Dustin.
Yeah, we established. One thing I really like about these pages, just, this covers one of my favorite things about manuals in general. Seeing all these renders for all of the different moves, that's great. I love seeing stuff like that. Seeing these characters pull off what they'll be doing in the game.
Rare provided a wealth of assets for this game, to Nintendo, to all the publications. I mean, and like Steve Mails claims, well, we didn't intend to get the ass shots out there, but they got out. And here's the thing about that, though. You say you didn't intend to get the ass shots out there, but yet Nintendo ran with the ass shots. They put it on the back of the player's guide. They did a promotional t-shirt for the ass shot that said Donkey Kong's back.
Yeah, they wanted people to enjoy this.
So I don't know, Steve Mails. I think you might just all be a bunch of perverts at Rare, and you're like, oops, we didn't mean to do that. And then the perverts at Nintendo were like, well, too late now.
Oh man, we're accidentally putting this render on these shirts.
So they're just like that Kremlin hiding in the bushes on the Congo Jungle map screen that we can't see. They're just, we're so clever.
Right, there's a big arrow pointing to them saying Nintendo employees.
Perverts, yeah.
Yeah, perverts.
So why don't you read Diddy Kong's profile? By the way, Diddy Kong, his name is against a blue diamond.
Yeah. The classic Donkey Kong blue diamond with all the stars.
Well, he does have 3 stars by his name. This is before Diddy was associated with stars, because he didn't have his stars on his tank top back then.
Yeah. I also like how, so Donkey Kong's render is him, it's just kind of a nice profile shot. Diddy's is him staring off into space.
Well, it looks like Donkey Kong is looking at you, the reader, while Diddy Kong is looking at his name. Like, wow, my name up in lights. I made it.
Wow, my name against a big blue diamond.
The dream.
All right, I'll read Diddy's little paragraph.
All right.
Although he would never admit it, Diddy Kong is a Donkey Kong wannabe. His ambition in life is to be a video game hero just like the big guy. And although Donkey Kong would never say it to Diddy's face, the kid has potential. He's fast, agile, and has the heart to be a world-class video game hero. He just needs a little more experience and, of course, exposure.
Be careful, exposure is what got Bumper arrested.
Yeah, look at that picture of Diddy doing his cartwheel with his crotch in the air.
So, couple things. This is the first instance of the word wannabe married to Diddy Kong. That wannabe term would be used quite a bit throughout the 90s.
Right. It was just a way to describe Diddy's ambitions.
In the Donkey Kong 64 manual, he's referred to as a nephew wannabe. So, just putting that out there.
He wants to be a nephew.
That's why I argue he's not literally Donkey Kong's nephew, Dustin. He's a nephew wannabe. A spiritual nephew, but not one by blood.
Right. It also doesn't help that one is a gorilla and one is a monkey.
But you say that to your fellow Idaho Crewans and they yell at me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they... Especially Ape. Especially, he's really on board the nephew train.
The thing is, though, Ape, Donkey Kong is an ape, and Diddy Kong is a monkey. Doesn't work.
That's just how biology works.
You could be a spiritual enough, like, yes, Diddy, you are part of my family, and they hug, and they're like, you are not my nephew by blood, but you are my nephew by spirit. Vin Diesel, Fast and Furious, whatever. But
I'm just imagining Donkey Kong saying that to Diddy's face. He says, "You know what, Diddy? You are not my nephew by blood."
But then he's like,
And that's the end.
but come here. And he hawks a big loogie into his mouth. And he's like, now I'm part of you.
He's like, wow, awesome.
And also,
yeah, it's kind of like how sometimes a family friend, like a friend of the family, sometimes a child will call them like Uncle Albert or something.
right, Admiral Halsey. But
Yeah.
I think that like there's clearly no familiar relation in this Donkey Kong Country manual. The nephew thing only comes up in the year 1999. And then it's never brought up again. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll blame Y2K on that one. But also, why would Donkey Kong never say it to Diddy's face? Why are you going to be that withholding, Donkey Kong? Like, talk up this kid. Like, help his self-esteem. Yeah, you know, that Diddy,
really?
That Diddy is terrific. I would never say it to his face.
I would never tell him. I don't want him to get too big for his britches.
He doesn't even have britches. How could he get too big for them?
Exactly. Just say it to him.
Anyway, this is just basically where the manual drills into you the difference in abilities between the two Kongs. And this is actually pretty important. We're not going to read it, but it's pretty important because Donkey Kong is more powerful. He's stronger, but he's slightly slower and less agile. Diddy is weaker, but far more nimble and is also a better jumper and swimmer. And the advantages and disadvantages to how they hold barrels is also important. But like that would be what you would seriously weigh. The manual suggests, hey, if you are a slightly younger player and you're playing with an older player, play as Diddy and let the older player play as Donkey. Actually, that's not what I did. I was a year older than my friend Elliot, but I played as Diddy. Because
I'm taking Diddy. No, I don't care what this manual says.
Well, also because I just felt like Diddy was a little bit more challenging, and maybe not really, but at least as far as like dealing with the baddies. So I was like, all right, I'll be the slightly weaker one. You can take the stronger one, which I think I just gravitated to Diddy, and I just really wanted to play as him. But you know,
right.
But yeah, like that, those differences in character abilities, that would be something that would really be the first thing you would internalize when you would play a new Donkey Kong Country game back in the day, because it would be like, all right, now it's Diddy and Dixie. So what are Dixie's advantages versus Diddy? Oh, okay. Like Diddy can climb faster, but Dixie has the hair helicopter waft.
Right. Benefits to playing as both of them.
Yeah. And then, you know, Dixie and Kitty. Okay. What can Kitty do that makes not playing as Dixie worthwhile? And, you know,
he can cry.
Yeah. He cries so hard. I mean, Dixie cries too, but not as, she doesn't scream like Kitty.
Right. Kitty screams.
Yeah.
He howls.
And, you know, to a lesser extent, that's in Tropical Freeze, you know, but it's less important. I mean, it's still important, but at least as far as like dividing between characters, I guess if you're playing 2-player, you know, it's like, I don't know. It was a big part of the series' identity back in the day, though.
Yeah.
So then the instruction manual gets into items, and not much to say here, but I do want to point out.
Yeah, we know what barrels are.
We know what barrels are. I do think one interesting thing, and this has only made me interesting in retrospect, like something that the retro games, their duology, actually really got right, that I'm surprised didn't come up in this instruction manual, because Dan Owsen does do a really good job at justifying a lot of the hows and whys of Donkey Kong Country. Like, why does this item do this? DK barrels, for example. But the balloons, the life balloons, there is no effort made to justify why balloons are the game's equivalent to 1-ups or 2-ups or 3-ups. That didn't get explained until Donkey Kong Country Returns, when we would physically see the balloons carry the Kongs back into the stage, which I thought was
that's fun.
A great touch.
Very cute, wonderful touch.
Yeah, and it's never clarified throughout the entire Rare era, and it's just weird in retrospect, because you'd think that Dan Owsen would have done that here, like, oh yeah, the balloons carry the Kongs back into the stage, even if you don't physically see that animation. Just weird.
Just a weird little thing.
So this is the part of the manual we kind of touched upon a little bit in our Destination DKU Vine Valley episode, but we're going to read them all. We're going to read them all this time. This is the Donkey Kong Country Atlas.
Ooh.
So, the introduction to this, and I love the little compass. This is a 2-page spread, and in the middle of each 2-page spread, there's like this little mock compass where instead of, north, east, south, and west, it's just DK.
That's my preferred compass.
There's really no good use that compass would have. You would die so quickly if you had that compass.
You will not make it home.
It's like, this will either take me to a donkey or this will take me to a Kong.
Either way, I win.
Yeah, I mean, you'll die, but at least you'll have a friend.
Yeah, I'll clap. I'll clap when I get there.
All right, so it says, you'll find a wide variety of ecosystems in Donkey Kong Country. Though the island itself is mainly tropical, there are great pine forests on the slopes of snow-capped peaks. The mountains are riddled with mines, natural tunnels, and caves. Surrounding the island are many tropical lagoons full of reefs and colorful fish. Following are general descriptions of each area. And rather than focus on the world, they focus on the archetypes.
Which is fun. I like that. Just the kind of general settings you'll see in the game.
Without spoiling the entire, structure of what you'll see, which later game manuals will do. They'll say, okay, it's Gangplank Galleon, Crocodile Cauldron. This one just gives you a general sense of what's what. Dustin, Why don't you read the jungle description?
You got it, Hyle. Jungle. Donkey Kong's home is in the jungle, where he is the master of all he surveys. Or so he thinks.
Idiot.
You'll start your adventure in Jungle Hijinks, which introduces you to the play control of the game. This is also a great place to earn extra lives if you come back to it later in the game. In the jungle, you'll find many vines strung between the palms that are great for swinging over trouble areas.
You don't really, though. You see a lot of ropes.
No.
You see ropes, but there aren't vines so much.
Yeah, there's a vine here and there, but it's not a thing you see often in these levels.
Also, Dan Owsen spells Jungle Hijinks wrong. Or I should say he spells it correctly. Or a version that's more correct than Rare's version. And maybe he thought, they're gonna fix that in...
Obviously an oversight.
Yeah, I kind of, for the record, hijinks is usually spelled with an X, but it's not XS. That's nonsense.
Yeah, that's an XS letter.
It is. And, sometimes hijinks is also spelled with the INKS, which Dan Owsen uses here. I'm not sure which one is. I think maybe the K is more correct here. So maybe Dan Owsen was spot on, unlike Horde.
He probably had it right.
Yeah.
But X is a fun letter. X is a cool letter.
Okay, Alon.
Except for in that one case.
Yeah, X is so fun, we're all fleeing to blue sky. All right. Factory. The Kremlin's crowning industrial achievements are the huge factories they built in Donkey Kong Country. These factories do not adhere to strict safety codes and are full of burning oil drums, faulty lighting, and perilous platforms. Enter at your own risk.
Ah!
I also love the render of the factory that they provided.
Oh yeah, same.
With the, steam blowing out of the pipes.
Yeah, that's cool. I love seeing these.
All right. Underwater, Dustin.
All right. While the underwater areas of Donkey Kong Country are some of the most beautiful, they are also some of the most dangerous. The waters are infested with sharks, piranhas, killer octopi, and stinging goldfish. Swim with care. Luckily, your animal friend on guard, the swordfish, is there to help you.
Not to correct you, but you said stinging goldfish instead of stinging jellyfish.
Oh my goodness, look what this podcast has done to me.
No, I'm fine, your Royston brain. That's good.
Yeah, exactly.
That is a good thing.
No, it's good that you did that.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I was so in the DK Vine zone, I was in too deep.
I know it would be funny to just like see what like your autopilot would be if you had no instruction. Like it would be like an AI generated conversation podcast.
Oh man, what a nightmare.
All right, mountains. The snow-capped peaks of Donkey Kong Country are rarely climbed due to the hazardous conditions found at such high elevations. The ground is like solid ice and does not offer a firm foothold for the explorer. Blinding blizzards often strike without warning. The resulting lack of visibility can make the already challenging obstacles in these areas next to impossible. And again, I love the render of like Gorilla Glacier there. It's like
same.
It's got that very early ACM snow that looks like so artificial. It looks like somebody spray painted like a foam kind of mock-up of snow.
Yeah, these are big clumps of whatever.
Not to be confused of the big clumps of whatever that you fight in the game.
Yeah, exactly. But it says these areas are next to impossible. I just won't bother then.
Yeah, no, I got the
Nobody
world,
can do this.
I got the world for. This is as far as we're gonna get.
Yeah.
Okay, treetops.
Oh, you get the fun treetops one.
No, you get the fun treetops one.
Oh, you're right. You did the snow. That thing with the goldfish just threw me so off my game. I don't even know what's up or down.
Basically drowned you.
Yeah, I'll forgive you. All right. In the lofty treetops of Donkey Kong Country, you'll find a deserted town of wooden platforms and huts, origin unknown. But while the original inhabitants may be gone, the place is teeming with Kremlings and their friends. Ready to ambush anyone who trespasses here. The barrel cannons are particularly tricky in the treetops.
I know, like, the Kremlin friends, they're just referring to, like, naughties and neckies, but it just sounds like, oh yeah, this is my friend, Cliff.
Here's Barry.
Barry with an A, not Barry the Chipmunk.
Yeah, exactly.
We already discussed...
We're all just hanging out.
We already discussed why the treetop thing is, like, kind of wrong, kind of incorrect, because it's clearly not uninhabited.
Yeah.
We discussed that on our Destination DKU episode. No need to get into it here. I will read caves.
Okay.
Donkey Kong Island has so many caves, tunnels, and mines. It's almost like a giant block of Swiss cheese. There are many types of caves. Almost. There are many types of caves, including some made out of solid ice. Caves have many secret passages, and of course, are full of Kremlings. Tires play an important part in spelunking through the caves. Use their enhanced bouncing ability to reach out-of-the-way places.
I love Donkey Kong just standing here alone in this dark cave.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. Also, the reference to Swiss cheese really does root this in our world, doesn't it? Like, my argument that Donkey Kong Island is supposed to take place on Earth and not the Mushroom Kingdom might have originated because the shout out to Swiss cheese.
Right, they wouldn't have Swiss cheese in the Mushroom Kingdom. It would be like, I don't know, Bean Kingdom cheese or something.
Bean cheese, right. Okay, mines. I will read that. Or no, you read mines. It's your turn.
Yeah, I get mines.
The Swiss cheese threw me, just like the goldfish threw you.
Throw this manual in the trash. It's really fucking with us. No, okay, so mines. The vast mines of Donkey Kong Country are now stripped of any ore they may have once contained. All the tools of the miners remain, however, from minecarts to rickety scaffolding. There are special barrels that turn the lights on and off and risky mine elevators full of slag.
Great word.
What does that mean?
Oh, it's full of slag, Dustin. Slag.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Slag as a noun, not as a verb.
I don't know what slag is.
It's like slivers of like minerals.
Oh, okay. See, I've never had to say it before. Without a hard hat, mine exploration is not recommended, but Clump is not about to give up his.
So, also interesting that the render is the render of Donkey Kong wearing the, like, miner's hat with the flashlight on it, which he doesn't use in the game, but it was planned at one point.
Yeah.
Of course, eventually they went with Squawks, but also, of course, the ore being stripped is retconned out. Like, that's not actually canon. Because Donkey Kong Country Returns, clearly establishes there's still plenty of gems down there.
Yeah, there's lots in there.
Okay, ruins. These monolithic ruins are now ruled by millstone-rolling naughty beavers. Of course, ruins are well known for their treasure, and you can find many forgotten items in these haunted buildings of vine-covered stone.
I like the way you read that, Hyle. It made me really want to be there in the ruins.
Here's the thing, Dustin. I did that Batman voice a little while ago, and my voice, I'm losing it currently. So this is a race against time to finish this episode.
You blew out your voice.
I blew out my voice for Donkey Kong Country. It was bound to happen.
Yeah, you know what? Is there any better way to blow out your voice?
Probably recording a hit song and becoming a millionaire.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'll read bonus levels. There are dozens of bonus levels hidden in Donkey Kong Country. Some are easy to find, others are almost impossible. All will give you extra lives, bananas, or other surprise items. Like a human hand.
Yeah, like Swiss cheese. Just a block of Swiss cheese.
Just whatever we have lying around.
So, the Animal Buddy, 2-page spread, which they refer to as Animal Friends, because Animal Buddies is nomenclature that didn't arise until Donkey Kong Country 2's credits. And for whatever reason, maybe it was early DK Vine and other people in the community, we really glommed onto Animal Buddies, as like the term to refer to them as.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see that Nintendo referred to them as Animal Buddies also in their, social media posts for Donkey Kong Country's 30th anniversary recently. But here they're Animal Friends, but I love the font that's used for Animal Friends. Because it's like a leopard or like cheetah print.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
no cheetah in Donkey Kong Country.
There's never been any big cat animal buddies, ever.
But, you get it. It's like spots. Some animals have spots.
Maybe eventually. I think this put the idea in my head. It's like, oh, maybe one day we will get, like, a cheetah as an animal buddy. Like, maybe in Donkey Kong Land 2.
And then we didn't.
We never have, no.
I would say maybe someday now, but maybe we should work on bringing back some of these other ones first.
Yeah, I think in Guard, maybe, for the water levels.
Yeah, that might be a good start.
Yeah, probably. That's a good idea. Okay, moving on. The Kong family. So this is, I think, instrumental. These paragraphs here are foundational building blocks towards our understanding of these three characters. In fact, I don't think we would have as much appreciation for them as we do were it not for Dan Owsen's prose here. I agree. Why don't you read Funky Kong's little mini bio?
Hyle, there's literally nothing I would rather do than read about my good pal Funky Kong.
Except maybe record a hit single that makes you a millionaire.
Yeah, I think that just might be the better outcome for anything.
Yeah.
Funky Kong, Donkey Kong's bronze-tanned, sunglasses-wearing surf punk friend, usually hangs out at Donkey Kong Country's main beaches. However, he also operates a special barrel flight service, which will allow Donkey and Diddy to travel back to any level in the game that they have already finished. Although Funky hates to go on adventures himself, he's too laid back. He keeps up on the island scene and may have useful information at times.
Yeah, like useful information like, hey, if you see Candy Kong, tell her I would totally have sex with her.
Yeah, or hey dudes, name's Funky Kong.
Or hey dudes, where's your buddy? Go back to the first level.
Yeah, he's pretty helpful.
Yeah. Also, bronze tanned. Can gorillas tan?
I mean, he has plenty of exposed skin.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I've never held up a UV light to a gorilla to really test it out. Like, all right, let's see what this does.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll have to someday.
I think that should be a new patron tier. Also, the line "Funky hates to go on adventures himself." That's kind of been used as a cudgel every time Funky has been playable since then. Like, but it says here he hates to go on adventures himself. He might.
Yeah, so just know that Funky Kong in New Funky Mode in Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is hating every second of this.
I think he will rise to the occasion when needed. Because Funky also goes through a little bit of an arc himself where he becomes less of a laid-back surfer and more of a brilliant mechanic. And he really, like, I think, focuses on the battle against the Kremlins and kind of takes his role more seriously going forward.
Yeah. Well, he also finds a passion. Like he's
Guns.
just kind of a surfer bum.
Yeah.
He's a slacker. But then he realizes he likes to tinker, he likes to invent, and he loves guns. We can never forget that.
Non-lethal guns, mind you.
Yeah, they shout fruit.
He's
fruit. Like, I like when things launch fruit.
They're silly. They're silly little weapons. But I also love that, because in this render here of the Kong family in the game, I love that his surfboard, it says Surf Nintendo.
Oh my god, it does. I didn't even realize.
Which it's like, yeah, you surf Maui, you surf, I don't know, surf Long Beach. No, I surf Nintendo.
I surf Nintendo, dude.
That's also the surfboard that appears on the Funky's Flights logo at Donkey Kong Country at Universal Studios.
That's fun.
I know, they brought it back. So Candy Kong. Candy Kong is the banana of Donkey Kong's eye and one of his closest friends. Although everyone assumes that they will get married someday, Donkey Kong's just not ready to settle down yet, in Candy's opinion. Candy is also very fond of Diddy and would pinch his little cheeks at every opportunity if she had the frames of animation to do it. Donkey and Diddy will meet up with Candy often as they search for their missing bananas. When they do, Candy will give them a chance to save their progress through the game so far. All you have to do to save is jump into Candy's save barrel.
Wow, she just wants to pinch Diddy's little cheeks.
Yep. It makes it sound like she's a grandma.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
Yeah, no, that's why they replaced her in Donkey Kong Country 2. It's like, oh, that doesn't make sense, but we gotta have somebody pinching Diddy's adorable little cheeks.
Yeah, somebody's gotta do it.
These cheeks are just going unpinched. We can't have that. Also, like, they really do hedge their bets if Donkey and Candy are in a relationship in this game, right? Like,
yeah, we're not gonna say.
He's like, oh yeah, the banana of Donkey Kong's eye, so Donkey Kong, like, has a thing for her, but one of his closest friends. Everyone assumes they're gonna get married.
Yeah, but they don't want to say they're in a committed relationship right now.
It's weird. I think it's just because, like, kids won't relate to sexual desire, so we're just gonna downplay that.
I guess that makes sense.
Ew, liking girls. Ew.
Can I just say, I don't know how I feel about the renders at the bottom of all of the Kongs just staring at you.
I like that because they really, I think, give the impression that they are embarrassed for you.
I can't believe you're reading this.
Well, that's what Cranky basically says that a few times in the manual itself. So,
yeah, I think it's fine for a lot of them, but DK and Cranky look like they're about to come beat me up.
Yeah, like something about Donkey Kong's expression is just like, you piece of shit. Like he has his mouth open just slightly. It's like he's muttering. He's like, fuck you.
It's like he's Michael Myers, like no rational mind, just pure hatred and violence.
Oh, I thought you meant like the Saturday Night Live alum, the Wayne's World.
Oh,
Austin
Behave.
Powers guy. Yeah. Shrek.
Yeah, I mean, I know that is the one I normally bring up.
All right. Dustin, read Cranky Kong's description.
You got it. Donkey Kong's grouchy pappy is actually the original Donkey Kong who starred in the many Donkey Kong arcade classics of the 80s. He considers those games the pinnacle of game design and will have nothing to do with the newfangled graphics, sound, and multiple button controllers of today's Nintendo mega hits. Donkey Kong will encounter Cranky throughout his adventure at his many cabins scattered across Donkey Kong Country. Cranky will usually be grateful for the chance to converse, specifically to get on Donkey's case about the state of games today. Although most of Cranky's conversations are hot air, he will occasionally drop a hint or two about the game, as he is anxious to pass on his game prowess to the younger generation of game fans. His problem is he only has a 3-frame walk, so he can't participate in the action. Cranky can chew your ear off if you give him the chance, so once you get tired of him, just take off.
Actually, the Nintendo character who can chew your ear off is Mike Tyson from Off of Punch-Out.
Hey!
Timely reference.
Is that the reason you did this episode, so you could break that one out?
Got him. Got that convicted rapist. Boom!
Good job. Yeah, so Cranky Kong, he's pretty good.
Yeah. It's Grouchy Pappy.
Grouchy Pappy Cranky.
Also, I like that it says he considers his games the pinnacle of game design and will have nothing to do with today's Nintendo mega hits. How does he feel about the Sega mega hits?
He's like, oh no, that shit's good. I like that.
How does he feel about the PlayStation?
That would be great. You see a Sega Genesis in Cranky Kong's house.
Yeah.
The ultimate just fuck you.
He has an Atari Jaguar or like
I don't play that Nintendo baby shit.
3DO, yeah. Cranky's a sophisticated connoisseur of game design.
Yeah, have you seen those graphics in Crash Bandicoot?
Crash Bandicoot wasn't out yet, Dustin.
I know, I just mean in general.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah. Pretty good.
So the baddies pages, there are 3 pages dedicated to the baddies, and
the bad guys are just surrounded in green fart stink, so you know they're the bad guys.
They stink is what the game is implying. PU, like
stinky,
the stench of villainry,
similar to a diaper, one might say.
Right. Also, there's dripping orange goo at the top of the first baddie spread.
Oh man, this would have been great for a Spirit Halloween store.
Or Nickelodeon magazine.
That's true. It's like they're surrounded in slime. This really does have strong Nickelodeon energy.
Yeah, because the baddies word in the headline, if you will, it's like a scary Halloween font. It's like baddies galore. It's all squiggly and green and
I'm scared.
In the eye for baddies, there is a spiral in the dot. Great stuff. Kremlings everywhere, and not a Kremlin to drink. Doesn't say that. I added that little last bit. Kremlings are the tribe of reptilian rascals who have ripped off Donkey Kong's banana horde. They come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and shades. Yeah, they come in a variety of shades, Dustin.
I guess that's kind of true. You get like the different colors of critters and stuff.
I guess it's a good way not to like bring in like to make it sound like you're talking races. Like no, yeah. They're shades. They're cartoon crocodile men. We're not trying to draw any parallels here. We're not saying like
no, it's fine.
The Kremlings are Caucasians. So I do love that K. Rool. You've got the shadowed out render of him with a question mark. Like, what is this guy?
Yeah, he could be anyone.
What does this guy look like? Does he look like a big obese crocodile? Yeah.
Maybe he has a crown.
Yeah. Maybe he has a cape. We don't know.
He might.
He could just be like a bunch of naughty beavers in a trench coat.
That would be a twist. If they did that, I'd be like, oh, no wonder he was a silhouette.
As egregious as this is, at least there is a little bit of mystery. It's not like Lord Frederick at the beginning of Tropical Freeze where he's like all in shadow, but he looks like a walrus. Yeah. And you're like, what is it? What is this? What is this guy? He's hiding something. Oh no, he's just a big walrus. And there's really no...
He's just a big walrus that we saw in the intro.
There are no surprises to this design, actually. It's exactly what you thought he looked like. Like the big gold belly. Yeah. We didn't know about the big gold belly here. That was a surprise.
Yeah. See, you see that big gold belly and you say, oh, I never would have guessed that from his mysterious silhouette.
Also, under Rock, it says, this Kremlin uses a crafty disguise to make sneak attacks. Is it a disguise, Dan Owsen? Because he just seems to become like a big mound of rock.
That's a disguise. I'd say that counts as a disguise. He's trying to fool the Kongs. He's like, oh, you thought I was a big pile of rocks you don't have to worry about? I'm a big scary Kremlin.
I know, but I think they just literally become rocks. Like, I don't think it's like a costume he puts on, like a mustache.
Oh, I never saw it that. I just saw him as like he curls up into a ball and he just looks so much like rocks. I mean, it doesn't really matter because you see them curl. They're not fooling you. You saw them do it.
The sound effect, though, seems to me imply some sort of hardening.
Okay.
Wink, wink.
I'm with you.
So they do list the non-Kremlin enemies under other enemies. And it's funny because in the early days, Kremlin would often be used as this universal term for both the Kremlins and the baddies, depending on the source you would read it from. The instruction manual doesn't make that, we'll call it an error, because they are all part of the Kremlin crew, but Kremlin crew wasn't established as a term yet. So...
Right.
Yeah, like back in the day, I might have called like Neki or Army Kremlins because they were part of the Kremlin army, but I know better now.
Yeah, nowadays you wouldn't be caught dead doing something like that.
Dustin, read the description for Manky Kong because that's at least the interesting one here.
Okay. These Kong reject orangutans do know how to roll out the barrel.
Yeah, so there's you get the Kong reject label. So it just implies like they wanted to be part of Kong society, but they were too disgusting. They were too shitty.
They said, ew, no, get them out of here. We don't want them.
So they aligned with the Kremlins. Yeah,
who can blame them?
The underwater enemies get their own page, which is weird to me. I mean, I guess, you know, they wanted to they had to split it across multiple pages. So that's just how they broke them down. But it also, the headline doesn't say more baddies. It says more Atlas.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Did they screw that up? Did they accidentally copy and paste the wrong asset and they didn't catch it in time?
Maybe. I think that's the only possible explanation. Because right underneath it says underwater enemies.
Yeah, I never thought about that. They tried to control V, the baddies one, but they accidentally had the Atlas one saved.
We did a bad job on this. Whoopsie.
Anyway.
I really like Cranky at the bottom of this page, though. The render for one... Just him, mouth wide open, staring at you. But what he's saying is, nope, none of these baddies are in. They must have slipped in the wrong instructions manual or something.
Yeah, don't worry, Dustin. I'm saving all the Cranky Kong quips for the very end here.
Okay. I'll save my little cranky commentary for later then.
Your commentary on the commentary.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we've done that before.
Let's see how he likes it.
So there is also a very interesting page towards the end, which is just the making of Donkey Kong Country. And you're like, ooh, I get a full documentary about the making of Donkey Kong Country in this manual. And no, it's 3 paragraphs.
Hey, that's something for the time, I guess.
So, if you hadn't seen the Donkey Kong Country Exposed VHS first, this really is your first exposure to the SGI wireframe models of like what went into the actual characters and how they were built at Rare. Dustin, why don't you go ahead and read the making of Donkey Kong Country? We'll just read it verbatim.
Okay, you got it. What makes the graphics of Donkey Kong Country so cool? Every image that you see on the game screen was actually designed on Silicon Graphics Inc. workstations, the same powerful computers that were used to create computer animation in movies like Jurassic Park and Terminator 2: Judgment Day.
Woo!
First, the artists for Donkey Kong Country created computer models of every character in the game.
Computer models are in quotes. Computer models, like so-called computer models.
Yeah, I don't know why they had to have them in quotes. What else would you call them?
I don't know. Computer models. That's what I would call them.
Yeah, I would just straight up call them computer models. Computer models are basically three-dimensional images of the character that can be viewed on the computer from all directions and in any place.
Including
or
the
any pose, is what I meant to say.
Including their assholes.
Yeah, you can see right up into the... You can give them a straight-up colonoscopy if you want to.
That's Cranky had to get one when they aged him up. They were like, "Oh, it's time, buddy. You got to get that colonoscopy."
Look, it's a wellness thing. Just do it.
We'll use a banana. Don't worry.
The character pictures in this manual are what the computer models look like on a Silicon Graphics computer. The game designers took those models and translated the data into a format usable by the Super NES. That's cool. That's cool.
I mean, that's where the renders come from. They are the actual models of the characters before they get like downgraded for the Super NES or even the Game Boy.
Yeah, that's neato stuff.
Neato petito.
The results... The results are still spectacular and provide the most realistic and three-dimensional graphics ever seen in video games.
Ever on any platform.
This is as good as it's gotten and as good as it's gonna get.
You can die now.
We believe that this use of computers to design graphics will revolutionize the way games are made in the future, and Donkey Kong Country is just the beginning.
Yeah, there's going to be Killer Instinct and Ken Griffey Jr.'s Winning Run and Donkey Kong Land and Donkey Kong Country 2 and Donkey Kong Land 2 and Donkey Kong Country 3, Donkey Kong Land 3, Killer Instinct 2 / Killer Instinct Gold, and then that's basically it.
Yeah, but that's all you need.
Yeah.
That's the future.
Then it's just going to be Polygon, sorry. Yeah, I don't know. I always thought that was cool because it was just like, yeah, we know this game is hot shit. Here's how we actually made it look so fucking rad.
Yeah, I mean, especially for the time, like that DKC exposed video, not everyone's going to have that. This is just a little something, a one little page something to say, hey, this is how we did this. Ain't it neat?
Yeah. So, aforementioned Cranky Kong interjection. What makes this manual so memorable to those who have just perused it is Cranky Kong has little pop-up appearances throughout the manual where he shits on the game. And
not literally, of course.
No, that would be Conker's Bad Fur Day. But this is what really, really won me over on that car ride home from Blockbuster Video. Seeing this old man, this old gorilla just pop up and basically shit talk the game, shit talk you for reading the instruction manual. I had never seen anything like it. This snarky, this self-aware, this this level of humor in a Nintendo product. Because I had read every instruction manual to any game I owned or rented up until this point. And this was just this completely fresh attitude. And it immediately won me over as far as the character of Cranky Kong, as far as the sense of humor that the game had, and ultimately Rare itself, because this would be a lot of their own ethos, this self-deprecation.
Right. This old guy is making fun of the game and making fun of me for playing it and reading this. This is the best game ever made.
This is like I am being roasted. This is like I am some sort of celebrity, and all of my celebrity friends are on the dais with me, and they're just making me feel terrible about myself, and I love it.
It's so good.
So let's read all of these Cranky Kong dialogues. Here's the problem, though, Dustin. I can't do the old man prospector voice anymore. My voice is hanging on by a thread. So I am just going to have to read it as old Hyle rather than old man Minor. So
we understand. You gave it your best shot.
I did, and it's the Batman's fault, honestly. Now,
right, that one really took it out of you.
Now I know how the Riddler feels.
That's my favorite thing you've ever said.
You go to all this effort, right? And you want to impress. You want everybody to say, like, ooh, what a genius that guy is. And then the Batman comes along and ruins your riddles. And
what's the riddles? Give me the answer to the riddle.
Careful, Dustin. Careful. That path.
Oh, I almost did it.
That path leads to ruin. I know. All right.
Don't be like me.
So immediately when you open it, you've got the the official Nintendo seal of quality, the thank you for selecting Donkey Kong Country Game Pack for your Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Please read the instruction booklet thoroughly to ensure maximum enjoyment of your new game. Keep this instruction booklet and warranty in a safe place for future reference. Warning, do not turn the power on and off. You'll accidentally delete your game, etc. And then at the very bottom, Cranky says, look at the fancy box. Look at the size of this instruction manual. You don't think they would have gone to all this trouble of the game was any good. Oh, there's a typo there.
Of the game.
You don't think they would have gone to all this trouble of the game was any good, do you? I never noticed that typo.
Don't worry, Cranky. I said goldfish earlier.
Oh my god, this game is terrible, Dustin.
We're gonna have to delete the website. I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna delete 12 years of Kongversation.
It was all for naught.
Oh, my life is a lie. It picks up from here, though. There's redemption. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So under the very end of the story, it was a dark and stormy night. Cranky says, "You're only reading this because you're bored." And I would love to have this Cranky render by itself without the dialogue bubble obscuring his hand.
Think of all of the news articles you could write and use that render for.
It's the face palm. It's Cranky face palming. And
that would be the perfect emote for the forum.
Oh my god, I want somebody at Rare to smuggle this out for me and just send it to me. And
yeah,
because this would be I would love to have this isolated render. It would be the perfect response image to anything.
It would be awesome. The dream world.
I'll let you read some, Dustin. Map screens under the description of map screens. Cranky pops in, and he's got they reuse a lot of the same poses for some of these. This is the same pose as the first one, where he looks kind of.
This is my favorite one.
He looks shocked and exasperated. He's like, what?
Yeah, jaw hanging open.
Yeah.
Ah! I wouldn't believe a word of this. I've been everywhere and I found only 2 locations. Bad ones at that.
I've been everywhere in the game. I only found 2
and they
locations.
Sucked.
And they were shit. Utter shit.
Get this shit out of here.
Which that just to me implies that Cranky's just lying to you. He's gaslighting you.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. Cranky's not actually bad at the game. He just wants you to not play this game. He's trying to warn you off, and he's just feeding you a bill of goods.
This game is garbage. There's 2 locations, and they're both awful. You're better off turning it off and going down to the arcade, maybe.
Yeah, if they'll have an arcade.
That's true. All of these Cranky renders would just be perfect. The facepalm one is great, but even this one with him raising his hands up being like, whoa, that would be perfect to have.
The one next to the Super Nintendo control, the button layout.
Yeah, where he says, well, I've never seen so much rubbish. A good game shouldn't need any explanation.
Which it's just the perfect quintessential response of any like Nintendo zealot to like like talking about game design and just like it feels like so many Cranky's quotes in this manual are what Donkey Kong Country's actual critics would say during the buyout era.
Yeah.
Like completely like stripped of the irony that they are just parroting what a character from Donkey Kong Country said about Donkey Kong Country.
And they look just like him.
Yeah, they're all a bunch of old apes.
Yeah, it's amazing that these elderly gorillas in real life can speak so fluently.
Yeah, really, we should have just been impressed rather than annoyed by them.
Oh my god, look at him. He said all of that.
This means Donkey Kong Country is real. It's really, really real.
Thank you, old man. He's like, no, I didn't want you to be excited.
I'll read the next two. This is my most
Okay.
Quoted Cranky Kong quote from this manual, and it's the one I used for the YouTube and SoundCloud key art for this episode.
Nice.
It's where Cranky says, "I can't believe you're still reading this. What you need is a good trashing." Not
a good trashing.
Not thrashing, right? Like to me, it implies he's going to beat you, the child reading this. But he says
he's going to come out of the manual and beat the shit out of you.
Yeah. So what he says is he's going to put you in a trash can, which he kind of does for Sonic and Earthworm Jim, right?
Right. It's Cranky's signature move.
Which that would be his final smash.
Yeah, he picks you up and puts you in a garbage can.
And then he punts you like Clump into the bushes.
See, we're making a good case for him to get in.
Sakurai, our most loyal patron, is taking notes right now. It's like, I guess I have to do a new Smash Brothers.
It just won't feel complete if we don't get Cranky Kong and his famous trash can move in there.
Yeah, the trash can kick. And he'll kick you across the like every single Smash Brothers stage. You just see the trash can go soaring.
That'd be great. I love that.
Okay.
Yeah, the next Smash Brothers, the only new characters are Cranky Kong and Clump.
Actually, Clump is just a clone, an echo fighter of Cranky Kong.
Yeah. He has his famous army boot punt.
Yeah. Animal tokens, under animal tokens, and like talking about the bonus areas the animal tokens send you to, the animal token mini games. Cranky, in his open mouth, gaping expression, says, "Bonus levels? Ha! Don't hold your breath looking for these. There are none." Which again,
that's a straight up lie.
He's just lying to you. He's just trying to dissuade you from playing Donkey Kong Country. Little shit.
Yeah, I like that it's not even him saying, oh, bonus levels, more like shitty suck levels. He's just saying, no, there are none here.
Yeah, no. Stop. Don't play this game. Don't put the cartridge in the slot. Don't put it in the hole.
I will be so mad if you play this.
Probably the funniest instance of him popping up at this point is under the Kong family bios, because rather than have him pop up in like the pop-up square that he's been popping up in, just like the Mystery Science Theater style, like I'm making commentary on this, like from some sort of outside perspective. It's him in the group shot, and it's him talking to you while staring at you. Like the render itself has like been overtaken by the real Cranky Kong, and he's like possessing it.
Tired of me? You're lucky I'm here to brighten up this boring manual. It's so threatening, and the way he's staring at you, it puts me a little on edge.
Tired of me? Tough titties.
You thought you could be rid of me so easily?
And then underneath the underwater enemies at the end of the baddies section, Cranky lies to you again. Go ahead and read this one.
Yeah, I said this one earlier, but I'll say it again. Nope, none of these baddies are in. They must have slipped in the wrong instruction manual or something. It's like, no, they're just... That's not a joke. You're just being a lying old man.
It really is just Cranky Kong. He can't deal with not being the star of a Donkey Kong game. And so he's trying to tank this. So they'll just like make Donkey Kong 4 or like, you know, like he really is just like very like make Donkey Kong 94 too or whatever. Like, don't do this. Like revert me back
to shit out of here.
Revert me back to a younger man, please.
Oh, that makes it sad. He's like begging them.
Please. Don't go down this route. Don't introduce my wife. I don't want any of this.
Take me back to the good old days.
So there is actually a build up to all of this. There's like the culmination of Cranky's little appearances here. And then there's 2 funny codas after it. But there is a page towards the end of the manual that's Cranky's advice, where Cranky finally cuts the bullshit and comes clean with you. Which,
he comes clean.
Yeah. Gratuitous semen. So, he still got the dialogue box, but then there's actual text written by him, in a similar manner to later instruction manuals. So, Cranky's advice. So in the dialogue box, he says, "Well, Sonny, in my day, we didn't have all this newfangled gameplay like in Donkey Kong Country. No siree. You game players today are spoiled by all the pretty pictures and stereo sound, when all you really need is great gameplay. Well, if you need some hints for this silly game, try these." And why don't we alternate these, Dustin?
You got it, Hyle. So I read the next one since you read the first little blurb.
You read the first bullet point, yes.
Okay, all right. There are tons of secret levels in this game. Always try to explore every level thoroughly to find these areas where you can earn extra lives. Of course, if I were playing, I wouldn't need any, but you might.
Some enemies are invulnerable to certain attacks, or might take more than one hit to beat. Try lots of things when you meet a new enemy. Even jump on his head. What a novel idea.
Wow. Follow the trail of bananas to the goal in each level. There's a way to collect every banana in the game if you try hard enough.
If you try hard enough, yeah. You slacker.
Oh man, I thought I was doing pretty good.
I remember briefly considering whether or not they actually meant if you collect every banana in the game, it will like unlock something. Because after Donkey Kong Country 2 came out and there was a Lost World in that game, I was like, did I miss a Lost World in the first game? And then that
I need to get all of the bananas?
Yeah, it became like this element of paranoia for me where I was scared I had missed the Lost World of Donkey Kong Country and I would have nightmares about it. And this line right here made me feel like, oh no, was I supposed to collect every banana in the game?
Hyle's Halloween decorations every year after that would be the hidden Lost World of Donkey Kong Country 1.
Right. I didn't know, Dustin. And it wasn't until I got online that I was able to finally put that to rest. I even thought like the player's guide was like not telling me. Like I thought that
they're withholding information from me.
I mean, they would later do it with Stop and Swap. The Banjo-Kazooie player's guide did not make any reference to any of that.
True.
So, you know, it's not like there wouldn't be future precedent there.
That's true, Hyle. You're so right.
All right.
Except for where it turned out you were wrong.
Yeah. All right. Use teamwork. There are some things that Donkey Kong can do that Diddy can't. And even though the big ape won't admit it, Diddy is better at some things of his own. Why wouldn't he admit it? Like,
yeah, just give him that. Let him have it.
Dan Owsen did write Donkey Kong as more of a jerk than I think Rare and Lee Loveday wrote him as.
Yeah, they just wanted him to be this kind of laid back guy.
Yeah, and like a very loving role model, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's, because it's not like an arc for Donkey Kong to have where he's like, I'm gonna be less of a jerk.
Yeah, it's like, you know what I hate? This little punk who's always hanging out. Like, I'm sure there's a little bit of like annoyance, sure, but I think Diddy quickly endeared himself to Donkey. Like, by the end of the first world, they were like, all right, we're a team.
We're a good buddy pal.
Right. Little buddy. Yeah.
Mm.
So back in the day, there would always be these notes sections of the instruction manual where like you, the player, were supposed to write down passwords, if there were passwords, or like secrets, like, oh, like this is how you do this. This is the key to this. Nobody I knew would ever use these because for me, it would be defacing the instruction manual.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't want to write in it.
Right. So the fact that this is the very first time I'd seen this called out in an instruction manual was hilarious to me because Cranky Kong, on the notes page towards the end, Cranky Kong appears at the bottom and says, does anyone ever actually use these memo pages? Waste of paper if you ask me. And I was like, ha, got him.
Ooh, you memo page users. Don't you feel so silly?
And then finally, at the very back in the warning page, which was, this Nintendo game is not designed for use with any unauthorized copying device. Don't you dare copy this because the feds will break down your door and they'll shoot you dead if you try to copy this.
Jesus.
A warning,
It is accurate.
Copying of any Nintendo game is illegal, Dustin, and is strictly prohibited by domestic and international copyright law. So not just the feds, but also MI6, James Bond, after having sex with all those ladies, he's going to break down your door and he's going to shoot you in the head.
He's going to shoot you in the head, and then in the game GoldenEye, he will let everyone know that you pissed your pants when he did it.
Just so they won't copy GoldenEye then. He's like, let me tell you about this asshole who tried to copy Donkey Kong Country. I had sex with a bunch of ladies.
I got a little story.
I had sex with a bunch of ladies, and then I busted down their door and I shot them in their head and they peed themselves.
And you know what? I felt great about it.
Right. I like straightened my tie and I was like, time for a little martini.
I will never hesitate to do this again, so don't do it.
I have a license to kill, and I have killed so many people who copied Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo.
I've done so much worse to people for less than this.
So this is just basically, don't emulate our game, please, please, please.
Right.
But when you're a kid, it felt very serious.
Oh my god.
So anyway,
I don't think they're kidding with this.
So it felt very serious until I got to Donkey Kong Country because they put Cranky at the top in his facepalm expression. And he said, copy? Who'd want to copy this game? Which, the fact that they took a piss out of their own very stern warning to never copy, never emulate, never basically make a spare backup copy of a Nintendo game, because how dare you? This isn't your property. Nintendo is your God, Lord, and Master. The fact that they just took the mick out of that was just like, oh wow, this is edgy.
He's not afraid to go there.
Ha! Fuck you, Nintendo. I'm a Rare fanboy now.
This elderly gorilla showed me the way.
This elderly gorilla who taught me to hate Donkey Kong Country also taught me to love Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's poetry.
Oh my god, I love this manual, Dustin.
It's wonderful.
The legacy of this manual would be that every, or nearly every Donkey Kong Country style manual after this would try to live up to his reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And Donkey Kong Land doesn't have the Cranky interjections in its manual, but it does have a Cranky's advice section towards the end. I still really like the Donkey Kong Land manual, but it's not as colorful or funny as this one is. The Donkey Kong Country 2 manual comes close. I really do like the DKC2 manual, but it's less of a trapper keeper in its design aesthetics. It has the cranky interjections though, and I think they're almost as funny as they are here. It's not as surprising, but you're like, oh, thank God the cranky interjections are back.
Right. Here in the first game, you're more taken by surprise. You're seeing this sort of stuff for the first time. By 2, you know what to expect.
Yes. Donkey Kong Country 3 didn't have them, and I was just like, what the hell?
What are you doing?
Which, I guess maybe they thought, okay, this bit is old. And Dan Owsen wasn't doing the Country 3 manual, so I don't know. Maybe they were like, that's stepping on his bit. We don't want to do that. But by the time of Donkey Kong 64, and I know the Donkey Kong 64 manual was written entirely by Lee Loveday, that entire manual is written by Cranky Kong. So they just completely like chucked the idea of him commenting on the manual. Like, what if Cranky writes the manual?
He did the whole thing.
And so that manual actually might be my favorite because it is like the purest hit, right? Like a drug that is unfiltered and you just inject it straight into your veins and it kills you, which is what happened to Wrinkly Kong in that game.
Right. That's what makes it so good.
Yeah. And I think Cranky is at his most bitter and acidic and funniest for the Donkey Kong 64 manual.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong Country Returns. Oh my, I said how disappointing this manual was.
Mm-hmm.
And when we eventually get to it for manual transmission, it's going to be one of the saddest episodes we've ever done. Because for Donkey Kong Country 3 or Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, I understand why they didn't have the cranky interjections. But Donkey Kong Country Returns, they thought, well, it's Donkey Kong Country and it's returning. We should have cranky commentary. The fans will demand it. And we did demand it in 2010. I remember having these discussions with DK Vine staffers of the day and people in the forum. Like, do you think Cranky Kong will be shit-talking the game in the manual? I hope he does, because it is Donkey Kong Country Returns. We are back. We are back from the long, dark night in the wilderness. The dark and stormy night with Clump punting us in barrels into the bushes. We are back. Cranky Kong better have some stuff to say in the manual. And someone agreed and they said, we're going to have Cranky Kong make commentary in the manual. It wasn't the same. Sometimes you can't go home again, Dustin.
Yeah.
To wrap,
by this point, Nintendo had gotten away from that self-deprecating look.
The 90s were over. The era of extreme edginess was passé. The 2010s were a mixed bag. They were a decade where we had hope and optimism, and then we had despair and nihilism. And both pendulum swings were very earnest, right? So we didn't have time for cynical deconstruction of things.
Right.
So, to end this episode on the most sour note I could think of, Dustin, why don't you read one of the Cranky Kong interjections that I provided you from the Donkey Kong Country Returns manual?
Alrighty, Hyle. I'll give this the energy it deserves. I heard through the ape vine that something nifty might happen if you find all the Kong letters and puzzle pieces. Get a move on.
Can't wait to see that in HD in January.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.